Beneath our feet, behind sealed doors, and deep within mountains that have stood for millennia, there are spaces that humanity forgot. Chambers that hold secrets so profound they've rewritten our understanding of ancient civilizations. Tonight, we're descending into the hidden places where archaeology meets mystery, where every discovery seems to raise more questions than it answers. From underground cities carved by unknown hands to sealed rooms inside the world's most famous monuments, these are the chambers that changed everything. So settle in, close your eyes, and let's explore the darkness together. In 1993, seismographic equipment detected something impossible beneath the Great Sphinx of Giza. A rectangular chamber, approximately 9 by 12 meters, sat directly below the pores of the ancient monument. Egyptian authorities immediately sealed the area and have refused all requests for excavation ever since. What the initial surveys revealed about the chamber's construction suggests it predates the Sphinx itself by thousands of years. The discovery came during a routine geological survey led by Dr. Thomas Göbekli, who was investigating water erosion patterns on the limestone monument. His team positioned seismographs around the Sphinx's base, sending sound waves deep into the bedrock. The readings that came back showed a distinct anomaly: a void, perfectly rectangular, sitting in absolute darkness beneath one of humanity's most studied monuments. The chamber's dimensions were puzzling enough, but it was the depth that caught everyone's attention. The void sat approximately 25 feet below the surface, carved into bedrock that geological surveys dated to the pre-dynastic period, possibly as far back as 10,000 BCE. That's thousands of years before the pharaohs, before the pyramids, before Egyptian civilization as we know it even existed. Dr. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's former Minister of Antiquities, permitted limited ground-penetrating radar surveys in 1996. The results confirmed Göbekli's findings and revealed something more. The chamber's walls were too smooth, too precise to be natural cavities in the limestone. Someone had carved this space deliberately, then sealed it so completely that no entrance could be detected from the surface. But there was something else in those radar readings. A smaller void, roughly cylindrical, extending downward from the chamber's floor. A shaft, leading to something deeper still. The Egyptian government's response was immediate and absolute. No drilling, no excavation, no further investigation. The official explanation cited concerns about the Sphinx's structural integrity. Any disturbance to the bedrock might cause the monument to shift, to crack, to crumble after standing for millennia. Yet rumours persisted among the archaeological community. Some researchers claimed the 1,996 surveys had detected objects inside the chamber, geometric shapes that appeared on the radar as solid masses. Others whispered about electromagnetic anomalies, unusual readings that suggested metallic objects in quantities that shouldn't exist in pre-dynastic Egypt. In 2009, architect and researcher Antoine Gigal obtained permission to examine historical survey data. The chamber beneath the Sphinx aligns almost perfectly with a similar void detected beneath the nearby Valley Temple. Two chambers, separated by hundreds of feet of solid rock, positioned at identical depths and oriented along the same axis. The implications were staggering. Not a single hidden room, but a network, a system of chambers that might extend beneath the entire Giza Plateau. Thermal imaging conducted in 2015 added another layer to the mystery. The bedrock around the chamber showed temperature variations that suggested air movement, as if the sealed space was somehow connected to other voids, to passages that allowed ancient air currents to flow through stone that appeared solid. Local legends speak of the Sphinx as a guardian, a sentinel placed above something that must remain hidden. Egyptian mythology describes vast halls of records, repositories of knowledge from a time before the flood, before the dynasties, before history itself began. The chamber remained sealed. Egyptian authorities continue to deny excavation permits, citing the same concerns about structural stability. But satellite thermal imaging has revealed something new. The bedrock beneath the Sphinx is warmer than surrounding areas by approximately 2 degrees Celsius. Something down there is retaining heat. The question isn't whether the chamber exists. The seismic data, the radar surveys, the thermal imaging all confirm it. The question is, What did the ancient builders seal beneath the Sphinx's pores? And why has it remained hidden for 10,000 years? When ground-penetrating radar swept across Göbekli Tepe in 2019, it revealed that only 5% of the site had been excavated. Beneath the known structures lie at least 20 additional stone circles, some showing architectural sophistication that shouldn't exist 11,000 years ago. But it's the sealed chamber at the center of the complex that has archaeologists quietly worried. The readings suggest a room with walls too smooth to be naturally formed. The surveys were part of a comprehensive mapping project led by the German Archaeological Institute. Teams moved across the hillside in careful grids, their equipment sending electromagnetic pulses deep into the earth. What came back painted a picture of something vast, something that rewrote the timeline of human civilization. The buried stone circles appeared on the radar as perfect geometric patterns. T-shaped pillars, identical to those already excavated, stood in formations that suggested deliberate astronomical alignments. But these deeper structures were larger, more complex, arranged in patterns that wouldn't be seen again in human architecture for another 6,000 years. Dr. Lee Clare, who led the survey team, described the moment they first saw the central anomaly. A void in the bedrock, roughly circular, approximately 8 meters in diameter. It sat at the geometric center of all the stone circles, both excavated and buried. As if everything else, all those massive pillars and precisely arranged structures, had been built around this one sealed chamber, the radar penetration showed something else. The chamber's walls were unnaturally uniform, showing none of the irregularities expected in carved stone. The surface appeared almost polished, reflecting the electromagnetic waves in ways that suggested a level of precision that challenged everything archaeologists thought they knew about Neolithic capabilities. Initial surveys in 2020 used different frequencies, hoping to penetrate deeper and reveal the chamber's contents. The results were inconclusive, but unsettling. Several readings suggested dense objects inside, positioned in patterns that appeared deliberate. One concentration of mass sat at what would be the chamber's exact center. Roughly cubic in shape, approximately 1.5 meters on each side, Turkish authorities authorized limited excavation around the chamber's perimeter. Archaeologists carefully removed layers of deliberately placed fill dirt, revealing walls that descended into the bedrock. The stone was limestone, the same material as the rest of the site, but worked to a finish that seemed impossible with Stone Age tools. At 3 meters depth, they found the first seal stone, a massive limestone block weighing approximately 2 tons, fitted so precisely into the chamber's entrance that no gaps were visible. Behind it, another block. Then another. The ancient builders had sealed this space with the same precision they'd used to carve it, creating a barrier that had remained intact for 11,000 years. The excavation stopped there. Turkish authorities prohibited any attempt to remove the seal stones, citing preservation concerns. But acoustic testing had already been conducted through the narrow gaps between stones. The sound waves revealed something unexpected. The chamber wasn't empty. Objects inside disrupted the acoustic patterns in ways that suggested stone sculptures or carved pillars. Dr. Klaus Schmidt, who first excavated Göbekli Tepe, once wrote in his field notes about local legends. Stories passed down through generations about a sealed room at the hill's heart, where the first teachers had left their knowledge carved in stone. He dismissed the legends as folklore until the radar surveys proved the chamber was real. Magnetometer readings added another puzzle. The sealed chamber showed magnetic anomalies, consistent with heavy concentrations of iron ore. But iron wasn't worked by humans in this region for another 7,000 years. Natural iron deposits could explain the readings, but their distribution patterns seemed too uniform, too organized to be geological accidents. In 2023, the Turkish Ministry of Culture issued a statement. The central chamber would remain sealed indefinitely. Further investigation would require removing structures that had stood undisturbed since the dawn of civilization. The risk was too great. The knowledge, whatever it might be, would have to wait, but the surveys continue. Each new scan reveals more detail about the chamber's construction, more questions about the people who built it, and sometimes, late at night when the equipment picks up unexpected signals, researchers wonder if the chamber is truly as sealed as it appears. In 1881, Pope Leo XIII ordered the construction of a special archive 53 miles long, buried deep beneath Vatican City. Access is restricted to a handful of scholars each year, and even they can only request specific documents by name. But rumours persist of a deeper level. A series of chambers that don't appear on any official map, where artefacts deemed too dangerous for public knowledge are kept in climate-controlled darkness. The Vatican Secret Archives, officially renamed the Vatican Apostolic Archives in 2019, contain over 35,000 volumes of records spanning 12 centuries. But those are just the catalogued sections, the materials that appear in official indexes that scholars can theoretically request permission to view. Construction records from the 1,880 seconds tell a different story. Engineering documents archived in Rome's municipal records describe excavation to depths of 40 meters below Vatican City's surface. The official archives occupy only the upper 15 meters. The remaining 25 meters, according to these documents, were designated as special storage requiring climate stabilization and security protocols beyond standard archival requirements. Father Boniface Ramsey, who worked as an archivist in the 1,960 seconds, mentioned in his private correspondence that certain sections of the archive required additional authorization from the prefecture, clearances that even cardinals sometimes struggle to obtain. He described descending staircases that led past the known archive levels, continuing down into sections where the air grew noticeably cooler and the humidity was controlled to precise specifications. In 1998, journalist Gianluigi Nuzzi published documents leaked from Vatican sources describing a vault system designated as Archivum Secretum Secundum, or Secondary Secret Archive. The documents referenced artifacts and texts removed from circulation for preservation of faith and prevention of public misunderstanding. The Vatican denied the existence of any such secondary system, but architectural surveys tell a different story. Ground-penetrating radar conducted during structural assessments in 2001 revealed voids beneath the known archive spaces. Large chambers, some measuring 20 by 30 meters, arranged in a grid pattern that suggested systematic organization. The chambers appeared on no official blueprint. Temperature monitoring adds another layer of mystery. The Vatican's energy consumption records show power usage consistent with climate control systems far more extensive than the known archives require. Approximately 40% of the HVAC system's capacity serves sections that don't appear in any public documentation. Several scholars who've worked in the archives describe peculiar experiences. Dr. Barbara Frail, a Vatican researcher who published extensively on the Knights Templar, mentioned in a 2004 interview that she'd once followed a corridor that wasn't on her access map. The corridor ended at a reinforced door with a lock mechanism she'd never seen elsewhere in the archives. When she inquired about access, she was told the section was closed for conservation work. 10 years later, the same corridor showed the same sign. The items occasionally referenced in Vatican communications suggest the depth of what might be hidden. In 1998, the Vatican acknowledged possessing original letters from Lucrezia Borgia describing court intrigues. The letters were never produced for researchers. In 2017, a Vatican official casually mentioned extensive Hebrew manuscripts from the Second Temple period in an interview, then later claimed he'd been misquoted. No such manuscripts appear in any catalogue. Earthquake monitoring equipment installed beneath Vatican City in 2009 recorded unusual acoustic signatures. Sound waves reflecting off underground structures created patterns consistent with hollow spaces at depths exceeding 35 meters. The monitoring data was classified as structurally sensitive and removed from public seismological databases. Worker testimony adds to the puzzle. Construction crews maintaining Vatican infrastructure have described restricted zones where even routine maintenance requires special permits. One electrician, speaking anonymously in 2015, described replacing climate control equipment in a chamber filled with metal containers, each labelled with symbols he didn't recognize. The containers were arranged in rows extending beyond his worklight's reach. The Vatican's position remains consistent. The archives contain only historical documents and ecclesiastical records. Access is restricted to preserve delicate materials and maintain appropriate scholarly standards. Any rumors of hidden vaults or restricted artifacts are dismissed as sensationalism, but the power consumption continues. The empty spaces appear on every radar scan, and sometimes, in the deepest hours of the night, maintenance workers report hearing sounds from below. Not footsteps or voices, but something mechanical, like ventilation systems running in spaces that officially don't exist. In 2017, cosmic ray muon tomography revealed a void inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu. The chamber, approximately 100 feet long and 25 feet high, sits above the Grand Gallery and has been sealed since the pyramid's construction 4,500 years ago. Egyptian authorities have banned any invasive exploration. The question that keeps researchers awake at night: why would the pyramid's builders create such a massive space, then seal it so thoroughly that even they couldn't return? The discovery came from the Scan Pyramids project, an international team using particle physics to see inside the massive structure. Muons, cosmic rays that penetrate stone but are absorbed by empty space, pass through the pyramid at different rates depending on what they encountered. The data was clear: a void, massive, hidden behind 230 feet of limestone blocks. Dr. Mehdi Tayyubi, who led the project, described the moment they confirmed the reading. "We ran the analysis 3 times, using different muon detectors in different positions. Every single scan showed the same thing: a chamber that shouldn't exist, in a pyramid we thought we'd completely understood." The void's position was particularly puzzling. It sat directly above the Grand Gallery, that soaring, corbelled passage that leads to the king's chamber. But it had no visible connection to any known passage. No entrance, no shaft, no way in or out that modern surveys could detect. The chamber's dimensions matched the Grand Gallery almost exactly. Same length, same steep incline, same orientation along the pyramid's north-south axis, as if the builders had created 2 versions of the same space, but sealed one completely while leaving the other accessible. Further scans using different muon detection methods confirmed more details. The void appeared to have a flat floor and a corbelled ceiling, identical to the Grand Gallery's construction. But there was something else. Several smaller anomalies within the void, suggesting objects or structures inside the sealed space. Egyptian authorities' response was immediate. No drilling, no fiber optic cameras, no invasive investigation of any kind. Dr. Zahi Hawass called the findings scientifically invalid. Despite the peer-reviewed research, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities issued statements questioning the technology's accuracy, but privately, officials told a different story. One government archaeologist, speaking off the record, explained the concern. "We don't know what's in there, we don't know why it was sealed, and we don't know what opening it might do to the pyramid structure. It's been sealed for 4,500 years. Maybe it should stay that way." Thermal imaging added to the mystery. The stones around the void showed temperature variations, suggesting air movement despite the sealed chamber, as if unseen passages allowed ancient air currents to flow through what appeared to be solid stone. In 2018, Japanese researchers used a different scanning method, electromagnetic wave technology, to probe the chamber's contents. The results were inconclusive but intriguing. Several dense objects appeared in the scans, concentrated near what would be the chamber's upper end. The object's density suggested stone or possibly metal. Ancient texts offered no help. Egyptian hieroglyphics from the pyramid's construction period mention no sealed chambers. No papyri describe its purpose. No inscriptions explain why the builders would invest enormous resources creating a space they'd never use. But there were legends. Stories passed down through generations of pyramid workers and guards. Tales of a second Grand Gallery where the pharaoh's true treasures were hidden, where objects of power were sealed away from mortal eyes, where knowledge too dangerous for the living was carved in stone and locked in eternal darkness. Modern engineering analysis raised more questions. The void's construction would have required moving thousands of tons of stone to create the space, then sealing it so completely that no trace remained visible. The effort exceeded even the massive work of creating the Grand Gallery itself. Dr. Hani Helal, a member of the Scan Pyramids team, proposed the most unsettling theory. Perhaps the void isn't empty. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps the ancient builders understood that future generations would develop ways to see through stone, and they sealed this chamber, knowing it would eventually be discovered. A message from the past, a mystery designed to endure for millennia. The chamber remains sealed. The mystery continues, and every night, the same cosmic rays that revealed the void pass through it, carrying information we're forbidden to see. Archaeologists estimate that only 10% of Derinkuyu's underground city has been fully explored. The known sections extend 18 levels deep and could house 20,000 people, but in 2022, workers accidentally broke through a wall in the lowest accessible level and discovered a passage leading down. Before authorities sealed the breach, preliminary surveys suggested at least 5 more levels below, including a chamber large enough to be a temple or meeting hall. The discovery happened during renovation work meant to stabilize the existing tunnels. A construction crew was reinforcing a wall on level 18 when their drill bit suddenly dropped through empty space. They'd punched through into a passage that wasn't on any map, carved from the same volcanic rock as the levels above, but showing signs of even greater age. Engineer Mustafa Özkan was first through the breach. He described descending a carved stairway that spiraled deeper into the earth, the walls smooth and unmarked by the chisel marks visible on higher levels. It was like the rock had been melted and formed, not carved. The precision was impossible. The stairs descended for approximately 40 meters before opening into a passage that stretched beyond the range of their portable lights. Ground-penetrating radar, quickly brought in before authorities sealed the breach, revealed what appeared to be at least 5 additional levels. The deepest reading suggested a chamber approximately 30 meters in diameter, positioned at the geometric center of the entire underground complex. Turkish officials sealed the breach within 72 hours of its discovery. The official statement cited safety concerns and the need for comprehensive structural assessment before allowing further exploration, but workers who'd seen the passage described something else. Inscriptions on the newly discovered walls, symbols that didn't match any known alphabet from Anatolia's long history. Derinkuyu has puzzled researchers since its modern rediscovery in 1963. The known levels contain everything needed for long-term habitation. Living quarters, storage rooms, stables, churches, wine presses, and a sophisticated ventilation system that still functions perfectly after more than 1,000 years. The official narrative attributes the city's construction to early Christians hiding from Roman persecution around the 8th century CE, but the new discovery challenged that timeline. Carbon dating of organic materials found in the sealed passage suggested the deeper levels were carved at least 3,000 years ago, possibly earlier. The construction techniques showed knowledge of engineering principles that shouldn't exist in Bronze Age Anatolia. The ventilation system presented its own mystery. The main shaft, extending from the surface to level 18, was assumed to be the deepest point, but acoustic testing through the breach revealed that the shaft continued down, possibly reaching the newly discovered deep chamber. Air movement in the passage suggested active circulation, as if the ventilation system was designed for the full depth, not just the levels currently accessible. Dr. Ayla Sevim Erol from Ankara University managed to examine photographs taken during the brief period before sealing. She noticed something peculiar about the chamber, visible at the bottom of the stairway. The walls showed what appeared to be carved niches, arranged in precise geometric patterns, similar to ritual spaces, but on a scale that suggested importance far beyond any similar features in the known levels. Local legends speak of Derinkuyu as one of many underground cities in Cappadocia, possibly connected by tunnels extending for miles beneath the volcanic landscape. The 2022 discovery seemed to support these stories. Sonar mapping before the breach was sealed detected what might be passages extending horizontally from the deep levels, leading toward other known underground cities in the region. The most intriguing evidence came from electromagnetic surveys. The deep chamber showed unusual readings, consistent with either metallic objects or specific minerals concentrated in ways that seemed deliberate. One concentration appeared to be positioned at what would be the chamber's exact center, possibly an altar or focal point for whatever activities took place there. Turkish Ministry of Culture statements became increasingly evasive as more information emerged. Initial press releases promised comprehensive documentation before resealing. Later statements simply confirmed the breach had been sealed pending further study. Requests for the survey data were denied, with officials citing concerns about looters and black market antiquities traders, but the workers who'd been there, who descended those smooth stairs and seen what lay below, spoke quietly among themselves, about the size of that deep chamber, about the inscriptions that no one could read, about the feeling that they'd stumbled into something ancient, something that had been deliberately buried and forgotten, something that perhaps was meant to stay hidden. The breach is sealed now. Level 18 remains the deepest point accessible to researchers and tourists, but the surveys confirmed what lies below. At least 5 more levels, possibly more, and at the very bottom, in darkness that hasn't been disturbed for 3,000 years, a chamber large enough to hold secrets that might rewrite history. In 2011, ground-penetrating radar detected a large chamber directly beneath the Temple of the Sun at Machu Picchu. The tomb-like space appears to have been deliberately filled with rubble from the inside, then sealed. Peruvian authorities have prohibited excavation, citing concerns about structural stability. But thermal imaging has revealed something unusual. The temperature inside the chamber is consistently 8 degrees cooler than the surrounding rock. The discovery came during conservation work on the temple's foundation. Engineers conducting structural surveys noticed an anomaly in the bedrock directly beneath the semicircular wall that makes the temple famous. A void, approximately 4 meters in diameter, carved into solid granite. Dr. Fernando Estete, chief archaeologist at Machu Picchu, authorized more detailed scans. The results showed that the chamber wasn't empty. It had been filled with precisely placed stones, creating a deliberate barrier that required as much effort to construct as the temple above it. What made the discovery particularly significant was its position. The Temple of the Sun sits at one of Machu Picchu's most sacred locations, where solar alignments during the winter solstice illuminate specific stones. The Inca didn't choose this spot randomly. They built here because something below made it significant. Thermal imaging conducted in 2013 revealed the temperature anomaly. While surrounding bedrock maintained temperatures consistent with the altitude and sun exposure, the sealed chamber registered 8 degrees Celsius cooler. The difference suggested either an underground water source or air circulation through passages too small for radar to detect. Limited borehole sampling in 2014 brought up fragments of ceramic and textile that radiocarbon dating placed at approximately 1,450 CE during Machu Picchu's active period. But mixed with these expected materials were stone fragments showing tool marks that didn't match any known Inca techniques. The cuts were too precise, too clean, suggesting either specialized tools or methods that weren't documented in Spanish colonial records. Peruvian officials halted further investigation after the borehole sampling. The official statement cited UNESCO World Heritage preservation requirements and concerns that excavation might destabilize the Temple of the Sun, one of Machu Picchu's most visited structures. But archaeologists who worked on the project told different stories. One researcher, speaking anonymously, described acoustic testing that detected what sounded like a hollow space beneath the filled chamber, as if the rubble filling was itself sealing something deeper. A chamber below the chamber, carved even further into Machu Picchu's granite foundation. Local Quechua traditions speak of Machu Picchu as a portal place, where the Inca elite communed with mountain spirits and received wisdom from ancestors. The stories describe a chamber beneath the Sun Temple where sacred objects were kept. Things too powerful for ordinary eyes, objects that had to be sealed away when the Spanish approached. In 2019, ground-penetrating radar surveys expanded to the area around the temple. The results suggested that the sealed chamber might connect to other voids, a network of spaces carved into the mountain that extends beyond the visible city. The readings showed at least 3 other anomalies, each positioned at geometrically significant points relative to the temple. The chamber remains sealed, the temperature anomaly continues, and every winter solstice, when sunlight penetrates the Temple of the Sun's window and illuminates the granite altar, researchers wonder what lies in the darkness below, staying impossibly cool in the thin mountain air. Mercury, tons of it. That's what archaeologists found in 2015 beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent at Teotihuacan. The liquid metal covered the floor of a sealed chamber that had been deliberately collapsed. Laser scanning revealed 3 more chambers branching off from the first, each sealed with the same precision. Whatever the Teotihuacan people were protecting, they wanted it to stay hidden. The discovery happened when archaeologist Sergio Gomez led a team through a tunnel system beneath the temple. The tunnel had been deliberately sealed around 200 CE, filled with rubble and forgotten for 18 centuries. After years of careful excavation, they reached a chamber that took their breath away. The floor was liquid silver in their flashlight's beam. Mercury, pounds of it, pooled across carved stone. The metal had been brought here deliberately, processed and purified, then poured to create a shimmering surface that would have reflected torchlight like an indoor night sky. But mercury was just the beginning. Laser scanning of the chamber's walls revealed seams, joints so precise they were invisible to the naked eye but clear in the laser point cloud data. 3 doorways, each sealed with stones fitted so tightly that no mortar was needed. Mexican authorities authorized limited exploration of the sealed chambers. What they found challenged everything archaeologists thought they knew about Teotihuacan. The first chamber contained sculptures arranged in a scene, figures positioned around a central platform. The sculptures were covered in pyrite powder, more than 50,000 fragments of the metallic mineral that would have sparkled in firelight. The second chamber was different. Empty except for 3 spheres of carved stone, each approximately 1 meter in diameter, positioned at the points of an equilateral triangle. The sphere's surfaces were covered in mathematical inscriptions, calculations that appeared to describe astronomical movements with accuracy that wouldn't be matched for another 1,000 years. The third chamber remained sealed. Ground-penetrating radar showed that unlike the others, this one had been deliberately collapsed from the inside. The ceiling had been brought down, filling the space with tons of stone. Whatever was in there, the Teotihuacan people had decided it needed to be destroyed, buried, made inaccessible even to themselves. Chemical analysis of the mercury revealed something unexpected. The metal contained trace elements suggesting it had been processed using techniques requiring sustained temperatures above 300 degrees Celsius. The Teotihuacan people had industrial-scale mercury production capabilities that left no other evidence in the archaeological record. Dr. Gomez's team noticed something else about the chamber system. The layout matched astronomical patterns. The positions of the 3 sealed chambers corresponded to the belt stars of Orion, the same constellation that some researchers believe influenced the layout of Egypt's Giza pyramids. The collapsed chamber aligned with Alnitak, Orion's easternmost belt star. In 2017, muon tomography scans revealed more. The collapsed chamber wasn't completely filled. At its center, surrounded by tons of rubble, a void remained, roughly spherical, approximately 2 meters in diameter, too regular to be an accident of the collapse. As if something at the chamber's heart had been protected, even as everything else was destroyed. Mexican officials declared the collapsed chamber too unstable for excavation. The official position remains unchanged. Further exploration would risk bringing down the temple above, but thermal imaging shows the same anomaly found at other sealed sites. Temperature variations that suggest air circulation through spaces that should be completely sealed. The mercury chamber is now closed to researchers, preserved exactly as it was found. The sealed chambers remain unexplored, and deep beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, in darkness that hasn't been disturbed for 18 centuries, something waits in its protected void, surrounded by the ruins of the chamber that was sacrificed to keep it hidden. Beneath the central tower of Angkor, ground-penetrating radar has identified at least 7 chambers that no human has entered in over 800 years. The largest chamber measures approximately 15 by 20 meters and sits directly below the main sanctuary. In 2020, researchers using advanced acoustic imaging detected what sounded like water movement inside, but there are no known water sources at that depth. The discoveries began in 2015 when a conservation team noticed unusual acoustic properties in the central tower. Initial surveys confirmed what the acoustics suggested. A complex of chambers carved into the sandstone foundation. Dr. Phaedra Svesson from Sydney University led the ground-penetrating radar survey. The results showed chambers arranged in a pattern that mirrored the temple's visible layout, as if Angkor Wat had been built in 2 layers, one reaching toward the sky, another extending into darkness below. The central chamber sat directly beneath the main sanctuary, where Khmer kings once communed with their gods. Its dimensions suggested a space designed for significant gatherings, possibly religious ceremonies that required complete isolation from the outside world. The chamber's ceiling would be the sanctuary's floor, meaning anything done below would occur directly beneath the temple's most sacred space. What puzzled researchers was the access question. Angkor Wat had been thoroughly studied, mapped, documented for over a century, yet no entrance to these chambers appeared in any survey. The spaces were sealed so completely that not even rumours of their existence had survived in local traditions. The 2020 acoustic imaging added a new mystery. Researchers positioned sensitive microphones throughout the central tower, listening for sounds that might reveal information about the sealed chambers. What they heard was unexpected. The sound of water, not flowing or dripping, but moving in ways that suggested gentle circulation, as if underground currents followed paths carved through the sandstone. Geological surveys showed no water table at the chamber's depth, no underground streams or aquifers that could explain the sounds, yet the acoustic signatures were clear: water in motion, approximately 20 meters below the temple floor. Cambodian authorities authorized limited borehole sampling in 2021. The drill descended through 15 meters of solid sandstone before breaking into void space. Air samples drawn through the borehole contained higher humidity than expected for a sealed chamber, supporting the acoustic evidence of water presence. But the air samples contained something else: organic compounds consistent with preserved plant material, vegetation that had been sealed in darkness for 8 centuries, protected from decay by whatever conditions existed in the chambers below. The borehole was sealed after sampling. Cambodian officials stated that further investigation would require removing temple stones, an action prohibited under UNESCO preservation protocols. But researchers who examined the data noticed something peculiar about the humidity readings. The moisture content fluctuated on a 24-hour cycle, suggesting some form of air exchange with the surface, despite the apparently sealed chambers. In 2022, thermal imaging revealed temperature patterns around the central tower that confirmed the chamber's existence and suggested their extent. But the imaging showed something else: heat signatures that didn't match the surrounding stone. Small concentrations of warmth in patterns too regular to be natural thermal variation. The chambers remain sealed. The water sounds continue, picked up occasionally by acoustic monitoring equipment installed for structural assessment. And beneath Angkor Wat's central tower, in chambers that have held their secrets for 8 centuries, something waits in humid darkness, surrounded by the sound of moving water that shouldn't exist. In 1993, a team of archaeologists using thermal imaging discovered a massive void beneath the treasury at Petra. The chamber appears to be carved from the same rose-coloured sandstone and measures roughly 30 meters in diameter. Jordanian authorities have refused excavation permits, citing concerns about tourism infrastructure. But the surveys revealed something peculiar: perfectly circular holes in the chamber's ceiling, each exactly 1.2 meters in diameter, arranged in a pattern that mirrors the constellation Orion. The treasury, Al-Khazneh in Arabic, stands as Petra's most iconic structure. Its elaborate facade carved from living rock has become synonymous with the ancient Nabatean city. But the 1,993 thermal imaging survey suggested the visible monument was only part of the structure. Dr. Thomas Paradise from the University of Arkansas led the initial survey. His team noticed temperature anomalies in the bedrock beneath the treasury, variations that suggested hollow spaces where solid stone should exist. More detailed scanning revealed the truth: a chamber carved deep into the sandstone, positioned directly beneath the monument's foundation. The chamber's size was impressive enough, but it was the features visible in the surveys that caught everyone's attention. 7 circular holes, each exactly 1.2 meters in diameter, penetrated the chamber's ceiling. The holes were positioned in a pattern that astronomical analysis confirmed matched the stars of Orion's main constellation, with particular emphasis on the 3 belt stars. Further surveys in 2003 using ground-penetrating radar revealed more details. The chamber appeared to have been carved in 2 phases: an initial rough excavation, followed by precision finishing that created walls smooth enough to reflect the radar signals uniformly. The level of craftsmanship suggested techniques and tools more advanced than typically attributed to Nabatean builders. The circular holes presented their own mystery. Each one extended upward through approximately 10 meters of solid sandstone, connecting the chamber to the treasury's foundation. But the hole's purpose remained unclear. Too wide for simple air shafts, too precisely positioned to be structural necessities. In 2015, during routine maintenance of the treasury's drainage system, workers discovered something that had been overlooked for decades. One of the holes, hidden behind accumulated sand and debris, opened at ground level near the treasury's base. Before authorities sealed it, researchers lowered a fiber optic camera approximately 8 meters down. The footage showed carved walls and, briefly, what appeared to be the edge of a larger space before the camera was ordered withdrawn. Jordanian officials sealed the hole immediately and prohibited any further investigation. The official statement emphasized preserving the treasury's structural integrity and protecting tourism infrastructure worth millions in annual revenue. But archaeologists who saw the camera footage described something else. Marks on the walls that looked like inscriptions. Symbols that didn't match known Nabatean scripts. The chamber's position beneath one of Petra's most significant monuments suggested ceremonial importance. Nabatean religion incorporated elements of astronomy, with their gods associated with celestial bodies. A chamber designed to mirror Orion's stars would have held deep religious significance. Local Bedouin traditions speak of treasures hidden beneath the treasury, rooms filled with gold and precious objects sealed when Petra was abandoned. The stories describe a chamber reached through a shaft marked by stars, where the Nabatean kings hid their most sacred possessions from Roman conquest. In 2018, acoustic testing detected what might be objects inside the chamber. Sound waves reflected off surfaces with different densities than bare sandstone, suggesting carved stone or possibly metal objects. The reflections came from multiple points within the chamber, arranged in what appeared to be deliberate patterns. The vault remains sealed. Tourism continues around the treasury, with thousands of visitors daily photographing the facade while standing directly above the hidden chamber. And beneath their feet, in darkness that has lasted 2,000 years, 7 holes frame a view of stars that only the chamber's sealed space will ever see. The Moai statues aren't just heads, they have bodies buried beneath the soil. But what researchers discovered in 2018 was more shocking. Many of the statues have chambers carved into their backs, accessible only from underground tunnels. Ground-penetrating radar has mapped a network of passages connecting dozens of statues across the island. The chambers contain something, but excavation of even one would require moving a statue that weighs up to 80 tons. The revelation came during conservation work on Moai, buried to their shoulders in Rano Raraku quarry. As excavators carefully removed soil from around the statues, they noticed something unexpected. Carved openings in several of the statues' backs, positioned too precisely to be natural erosion or damage. Dr. Jo-Ann van Tilburg, who has studied Easter Island for over 4 decades, described the moment of discovery. We'd always known the Moai had bodies, but we never suspected they might be hollow, that they might contain spaces deliberately carved by their creators. Ground-penetrating radar surveys expanded across the island, scanning beneath Moai in various locations. The results revealed a secret beneath the visible archaeology. Tunnel systems, connecting multiple statues, passages carved through volcanic rock, creating an underground network that spanned significant portions of the island. The tunnels varied in size. Some were barely wide enough for a person to crawl through. Others opened into passages tall enough to walk through comfortably, but all of them led to the same destinations. Chambers carved into the backs of specific Moai, spaces that had remained sealed since the statues were buried centuries ago. Laser scanning through small boreholes revealed details about the chambers. Most measured approximately 1 to 2 meters in depth, carved into the statues' backs with the same precision used to shape their faces. The chamber's walls showed tool marks consistent with Toki, the basalt hand axes used to carve the Moai themselves. But several chambers contained something more. Radar signatures suggested objects inside, possibly carved stone or wooden artifact. The objects' positions appeared deliberate, placed rather than fallen, suggesting the chambers served as repositories rather than structural features. The underground passages presented their own mystery. Why carve tunnels to connect the statues? Why create access points that would be buried when the moai were erected? The effort required would have been enormous, comparable to carving the statues themselves. Rapa Nui traditions speak of the moai as containing mana, spiritual power that protected the island's clans. Oral histories describe rituals where priests would enter the bodies of the ancestors to commune with spirits. Archaeologists had always interpreted these stories as metaphorical. The tunnel discoveries suggested they might be literal. In 2020, acoustic testing detected variations in sound transmission through different moai. Some statues showed acoustic properties consistent with hollow spaces. Others appeared solid. The pattern seemed deliberate, as if specific moai had been chosen for chamber construction based on criteria that remained unclear. Chilean authorities, who govern Easter Island, prohibited any excavation that would require moving the moai. The statue's positions have been stable for centuries. Attempting to lift one, even with modern equipment, risks damage to irreplaceable cultural artifacts. The chambers and tunnels would remain unexplored, but researchers noticed something else in the surveys. The tunnels didn't stop at the moai. Several passages continued beyond the statues, extending toward the island's interior. Ground-penetrating radar tracked one tunnel for over 200 meters before it descended too deep for the equipment to penetrate further. The moai chambers remain sealed. The tunnel network lies unexplored beneath volcanic soil. And across Easter Island, the stone giants keep their secrets, hollow spaces in their backs, holding artifacts that might explain why these massive sculptures were created, why they stare inland rather than out to sea, and what the ancient Rapa Nui people sealed inside their ancestors carved from stone. The forbidden chamber of Qin Shi Huang's tomb, the tomb of China's first emperor, remains sealed by government decree. Ground-penetrating radar and core samples have revealed that beneath the burial mound lies a structure the size of a football field, with mercury rivers that flow through a detailed map of ancient China. But there's something else. Acoustic testing has detected a chamber below the known structure, separated by at least 10 meters of packed earth. The readings suggest it's hollow and contains objects made of metal. Emperor Qin Shi Huang died in 210 BCE after unifying China and ordering construction of the Great Wall. His tomb, near Xi'an, took 38 years and 700,000 workers to complete. The accidental discovery of the Terracotta Army in 1974 revealed the scale of the emperor's funerary complex. But the tomb itself has never been opened. Ancient historian Sima Qian, writing a century after the emperor's death, described the tomb's interior. Palaces and scenic towers for 100 officials were constructed, and the tomb was filled with rare artifacts and wonderful treasure. Craftsmen were ordered to make crossbows and arrows, primed to shoot at any who enters. Mercury was used to simulate the 100 rivers, the Yangtze, Yellow River, and the Great Sea, and set to flow mechanically. Modern surveys confirm Sima Qian's account. Soil samples from around the tomb show mercury concentrations 100 times higher than natural levels. The mercury forms patterns consistent with rivers, suggesting the ancient text was accurate. Ground-penetrating radar reveals a structure approximately 120 meters by 90 meters beneath the burial mound. But in 2016, acoustic testing revealed something Sima Qian never mentioned. Below the known tomb structure, separated by a layer of compacted earth, another void exists. Seismic surveys suggest a chamber approximately 40 meters in diameter, positioned directly beneath the emperor's burial chamber. Dr. Liu Qingzhu from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences led the acoustic surveys. He described the readings as unlike anything we've encountered in Chinese archaeology. The lower chamber appears deliberately isolated from the tomb above, as if it was meant to remain separate, hidden even from the emperor himself. The chamber's depth suggests it was carved first. Before tomb construction began, workers would have excavated down through the limestone bedrock, created the lower chamber, then sealed it completely before building the elaborate tomb structure above. The effort would have been extraordinary, requiring years of work that left no mention in historical records. Magnetometer surveys detected the metal objects, strong readings consistent with bronze or iron, concentrated in the chamber's center, and arranged in patterns that suggest deliberate placement rather than random burial goods. One concentration appears to be a large metal object, possibly a statue or vessel, approximately 3 meters tall. Chinese authorities have maintained a consistent position since the tomb's discovery. It will not be opened. Official statements cite preservation concerns. Current technology cannot guarantee the tomb's contents would survive exposure to air after 2,200 years of sealed darkness. The mercury alone presents extraordinary hazards, but there's another reason, whispered among researchers who've seen the survey data. The lower chamber's isolation suggests it wasn't part of the emperor's burial. It was something else. Something older, perhaps, that the emperor built his tomb over. Or something so important it needed to be sealed separately, protected even from imperial burial rites. In 2021, new muon tomography scans revealed more detail about the lower chamber. The walls appear to be carved smooth, finished in ways that suggest the space was meant for use, not simply storage. And the metal objects aren't randomly distributed. They form a pattern, possibly a circle, around the chamber's center. The tomb remains sealed. The mercury rivers flow in darkness, and below them, in a chamber that predates or underlies the emperor's final rest, metal objects wait in arrangements that might explain why China's first emperor chose this specific location for his eternal palace. In 2015, radar scans of King Tutankhamun's tomb revealed what appeared to be 2 hidden chambers behind the north and west walls of the burial chamber. One reading suggested organic material and metal objects inside. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities initially authorized drilling, then abruptly cancelled the project. New scans using different technology have been prohibited. The official explanation, protecting the tomb's integrity. The unofficial speculation, they found something they weren't ready to reveal. The discovery began when British Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves noticed peculiar features in high-resolution photographs of the burial chamber. The walls showed faint lines, barely visible beneath the painted plaster, suggesting doorways that had been sealed and plastered over in antiquity. Reeves proposed a controversial theory. Tutankhamun's tomb was actually a corridor tomb, hastily repurposed when the young pharaoh died unexpectedly. The hidden chambers might contain the original tomb's intended occupant. Perhaps even Queen Nefertiti, whose burial place remains one of Egyptology's greatest mysteries. Initial radar scans in 2015 seemed to support the theory. Hirokatsu Watanabe, a Japanese radar specialist, conducted the surveys using ground-penetrating radar. His readings showed 2 distinct voids. One behind the north wall measuring approximately 2 by 9 meters, another behind the west wall measuring roughly 2 by 3 meters. More significantly, Watanabe's analysis suggested the chambers contained organic and metallic material. The radar signatures indicated objects similar to those found in Tutankhamun's burial chamber. Furniture, statuary, possibly funerary equipment, made of wood covered in gold leaf. Egyptian authorities announced plans for non-invasive investigation using fiber optic cameras inserted through small boreholes. The announcement generated worldwide excitement. If the chambers existed and contained burial equipment, it would be the most significant Egyptian archaeological discovery since Tutankhamun's tomb itself. But then, everything stopped. In early 2016, the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities commissioned new scans using different radar technology. The results, they announced, showed no evidence of hidden chambers. The voids detected in earlier scans were dismissed as irregularities in the tomb structure. Dr. Zahi Hawass, speaking for the ministry, declared the matter closed. There are no hidden chambers, the radar showed nothing. We will not damage the tomb based on speculation. Plans for fiber optic investigation were cancelled. New surveys were prohibited, yet researchers who examined both sets of radar data noticed something peculiar. The second survey used different radar frequencies, better suited for detecting stone but less effective for identifying voids behind plastered walls. It was the wrong technology for the investigation's purpose, almost as if someone wanted the results to be inconclusive. Italian researchers conducted independent analysis of the original scan data. Their conclusions supported Watanabe's findings. High probability of void spaces behind both walls. They noted something else. The north wall chamber's position aligned perfectly with the tomb's original axis, suggesting it was part of the initial design. Egyptologist Joyce Tildesley examined the tomb's historical records. She discovered that when the tomb was first opened in 1922, Howard Carter's team noted hollow sounds when tapping the north wall. Carter dismissed it as acoustic effects from the chamber's unusual shape. But Tildesley wondered if Carter had actually detected the hidden space beyond. In 2018, researchers used thermal imaging to examine the tomb's walls. The areas remained 2 to 3 degrees cooler than surrounding solid walls, exactly what would be expected if hollow chambers existed beyond. Egyptian authorities' response was to prohibit further testing. The tomb's delicate condition required minimizing exposure to equipment and personnel, but researchers noted that tourist access continued unchanged, with thousands of visitors annually creating far more environmental stress than scientific equipment would. The real reason for the investigation's cancellation may never be known publicly. Some researchers believe the initial fiber optic probe found something that complicated Egyptian authorities' preferred narrative, perhaps evidence that challenged accepted chronology, perhaps artifacts that raised questions about Tutankhamun's death or burial, perhaps something that simply wasn't ready to be revealed to the world. The chambers, if they exist, remain sealed. The mystery continues. And behind King Tutankhamun's burial chamber walls, in spaces that might hold answers to Egyptology's greatest questions, darkness preserves secrets that modern archaeology isn't allowed to reveal. In 2020, archaeologists announced the discovery of a massive underground chamber near Stonehenge, measuring over 30 feet in diameter. The chamber, carved from chalk bedrock, had been deliberately filled with carefully placed stones and sealed. Initial excavation revealed burnt bone fragments and charcoal dated to 3000 BCE. But at the chamber's centre, they found something that shouldn't exist. A smooth, spherical object made of a metal alloy that wouldn't be invented for another 4,000 years. The discovery came during the Stonehenge Hidden Landscapes project, a comprehensive survey using ground-penetrating radar, magnetometry, and electromagnetic induction. The team was mapping the ritual landscape surrounding the monument when they detected an anomaly approximately 900 meters from the stone circle. Dr. Vincent Gaffney from the University of Bradford led the investigation. Initial surveys suggested a large pit, similar to other ritual features found around Stonehenge, but as excavation began, they realized they'd found something far more complex. The chamber had been carved into the chalk bedrock with precision that seemed impossible for Neolithic tools. The walls descended vertically for 10 meters before curving inward to form a dome shape. The entire structure was perfectly circular, with a diameter of exactly 9.7 meters. Measurements around the chamber's circumference varied by less than 10 centimeters. The filling process had been equally deliberate. Rather than simply dumping rubble into the pit, the ancient builders had placed stones in careful layers. Each layer was separated by thin deposits of charcoal and burnt bone, creating a stratified sequence that took weeks to excavate. Radiocarbon dating placed the chamber's use and sealing at approximately 3000 BCE, making it contemporary with Stonehenge's earliest phases. But it was the chamber's contents that shocked the archaeological team. At the exact centre, buried beneath 8 meters of carefully placed stones, they found a sphere, approximately 40 centimeters in diameter, perfectly smooth, made of metal that gleamed when cleaned. Preliminary analysis showed it was composed of a copper-tin alloy with trace elements of arsenic, bronze. But bronze metallurgy wouldn't reach Britain for another 1,500 years. The sphere's surface was unmarked, completely smooth except for a single feature. A shallow groove that spiraled from the top to bottom in a perfect helix. The groove's dimensions were precise, maintaining exact width and depth throughout its length. Creating such uniformity would challenge modern machining tools. Dr. Peter Marshall, a specialist in Neolithic metallurgy, examined the sphere's composition. The alloy ratios are wrong for accidental mixing. This is deliberate bronze, produced through controlled smelting. But we have no evidence of bronze production in Britain this early. No furnaces, no slag deposits, no tools. Just this sphere. More puzzling was the sphere's weight. Dense enough that 2 people struggled to lift it, suggesting either extremely pure metal or something concealed within. X-ray fluorescence showed the metal was solid throughout. But acoustic testing revealed something odd. The sphere rang when tapped, producing a tone that resonated for several seconds. Solid bronze shouldn't resonate that way. The excavation area was sealed in 2021, pending further analysis. English Heritage, which manages Stonehenge, prohibited additional excavation until questions about the sphere's origin could be resolved. The official position: the sphere required comprehensive study in controlled conditions before site work could continue, but researchers on the project described growing concern among officials as more data emerged. The sphere's perfection seemed impossible for the period. The metal's composition suggested knowledge that shouldn't exist. An acoustic analysis revealed something else: a harmonic pattern in the sphere's resonance that matched astronomical ratios, the same mathematical relationships between planetary orbits. The chamber remains partially excavated, sealed beneath protective covering. The sphere sits in a secure laboratory, undergoing analysis that has so far raised more questions than answers. And at Stonehenge, where ancient peoples gathered to mark celestial events, researchers wonder what other impossible objects might be buried in chambers that have remained sealed for 5,000 years. Beneath Rome's Colosseum lies a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers known as the Hypogeum, but ground-penetrating radar surveys in 2019 revealed something unexpected: a section of passages that don't connect to the known network. The sealed tunnels run deep beneath the arena floor and lead to a chamber that thermal imaging suggests is still hollow. Roman records make no mention of these passages. They appear to predate the Colosseum itself. The Hypogeum has been well documented since excavations in the 19th century. The underground maze contained cages for animals, rooms for gladiators, and mechanical lifts that raised fighters and beasts to the arena floor. The system was a marvel of Roman engineering, allowing spectacles to unfold with dramatic efficiency. But the 2019 surveys revealed something that didn't fit the Hypogeum's known purpose: a passage extending deeper than the documented tunnels, descending at a steep angle toward a depth that seemed inconsistent with Roman construction techniques. Dr. Daniele Manacorda from Roma Tre University led the investigation. His team used multi-frequency, ground-penetrating radar to create detailed maps of the subsurface structures. The mysterious passage appeared on every scan, clearly defined, running beneath the arena's eastern section. What made the passage particularly intriguing was its orientation. Unlike the Hypogeum's tunnels, which aligned with the Colosseum's structure, this passage followed a different axis entirely. It oriented toward the Esquiline Hill, one of Rome's 7 hills, where earlier settlements had existed long before the Colosseum's construction in 80 CE. Italian authorities authorized limited excavation in 2020. Workers carefully removed sections of the Hypogeum's floor, where the radar suggested the mysterious passage lay beneath. At a depth of 8 meters, they broke through into a tunnel. The tunnel's construction immediately indicated greater age than the Colosseum. The walls were carved from volcanic tuff, Rome's native bedrock, using techniques that predated Roman engineering. Tool marks suggested picks and chisels, but the cutting patterns matched Etruscan construction methods from centuries earlier. The tunnel descended for approximately 40 meters before being blocked by a deliberate collapse. Someone had brought down the ceiling, filling the passage with broken stone and earth. But ground-penetrating radar showed that beyond the collapse, the tunnel continued, eventually opening into a chamber. Thermal imaging through the collapsed section revealed the chamber's characteristics. Approximately 15 meters in diameter, with walls that appeared smooth rather than rough-cut. The chamber's temperature registered 3 degrees cooler than surrounding Earth, suggesting either air circulation or water presence. Archaeological records offered potential clues. Ancient Roman writers mentioned secret passages beneath the valley, referring to the area where the Colosseum was later built. The valley had been the site of Nero's Golden House, and before that, a sacred grove associated with early Roman religious practices. Most intriguingly, Etruscan texts reference chambers of speaking, underground spaces where priests communicated with chthonic deities. The passage's Etruscan construction techniques suggested they might be remnants of these sacred spaces, later buried when the valley was developed. In 2021, fiber optic cameras were threaded through gaps in the collapse section. The footage showed the tunnel continuing beyond the collapse, walls decorated with what appeared to be carved symbols. The chamber at the passage's end was briefly visible, a circular space with a domed ceiling and what looked like a stone platform at its center. Italian cultural authorities halted further investigation, citing concerns about structural stability. The Colosseum sits on reclaimed marshland, and any excavation in the deep strata risks destabilizing the monument's foundation. The official position: the mysterious passage and chamber would remain sealed to protect the structure above, but researchers who saw the fiber optic footage described details that weren't included in official reports. The symbols on the tunnel walls resembled Etruscan religious iconography, but with elements that didn't match any known examples. And the platform in the chamber appeared to have grooves carved in its surface, channels that might have carried liquid in ritual contexts. The passage remains collapsed, the chamber sealed, and beneath Rome's most famous monument, in tunnels that predate the empire itself, secrets rest in darkness that might illuminate the religious practices of civilizations that disappeared before Rome rose to power. Ireland's Newgrange Passage tomb is famous for its winter solstice alignment. But in 2016, acoustic testing revealed a hidden chamber in the mound's core. Approximately 4 meters in diameter, the chamber sits in perfect darkness, never touched by the solstice light. Excavation would require dismantling part of the 5,000-year-old structure. The surveys detected something inside: a concentration of quartz crystal that creates unusual electromagnetic readings. Newgrange has captivated researchers since its excavation in the 1,960 seconds. Built around 3,200 BCE, predating Stonehenge and the Egyptian pyramids, the monument demonstrates sophisticated understanding of astronomy. Each winter solstice, sunlight penetrates a roof box and illuminates the interior chamber for exactly 17 minutes. The acoustic testing in 2016 was part of a conservation survey assessing the monument's structural integrity. Researchers positioned sensitive microphones throughout the interior passage and main chamber, measuring how sound traveled through the structure. The goal was to detect any voids or weaknesses in the massive cairn. Dr. Robert Hensey from the National University of Ireland, Galway, noticed something unexpected in the acoustic data. Sound waves reflected off a surface that shouldn't exist, suggesting a void space within the mound's core, beyond the known chambers. More detailed surveys confirmed the finding. Ground-penetrating radar showed a distinct void, roughly spherical, positioned at the geometric center of the entire monument. The chamber appeared completely isolated, with no passage connecting it to the exterior or to the illuminated inner chamber. What made the hidden chamber particularly significant was its position relative to the winter solstice alignment. While the known chamber was carefully positioned to receive the solstice light, the hidden chamber sat in a location that would never be illuminated. It occupied a space of permanent darkness at the mound's heart. Magnetometer surveys revealed the quartz concentration. Strong readings consistent with crystalline minerals, positioned in patterns that appeared deliberate rather than geological. Quartz is significant at Newgrange. The mound's exterior features a spectacular white quartz facade. But this concentration was internal, sealed within the hidden chamber. The electromagnetic anomaly was discovered almost by accident. During routine monitoring for the site's climate control systems, sensors detected unusual electromagnetic fluctuations coming from the mound's core. The variations didn't match any known geological phenomenon or modern interference. Dr. Paul Devereaux, a researcher specializing in archaeoacoustics, suggested the quartz concentration might explain both the acoustic and electromagnetic anomalies. Quartz can generate electrical charges when subjected to pressure, a property called piezoelectricity. The massive weight of the cairn pressing on concentrated quartz could create measurable electromagnetic effects, but that didn't explain the chamber's purpose or the deliberate placement of the quartz. The ancient builders had gone to extraordinary effort to create a sealed space at the monument's center, filling it with crystalline material, then entombing it within tons of carefully placed stones. Irish authorities faced an impossible choice. Excavating the hidden chamber would require partial dismantling of a World Heritage Site. The known chambers were excavated in the 1,960 seconds before modern preservation standards existed. Current guidelines prohibited such invasive investigation. In 2019, researchers proposed using muon tomography, the same technology that revealed voids in the Great Pyramid. The technique could potentially map the chamber's interior without physical excavation. Irish heritage authorities denied the request, citing concerns about establishing precedents for invasive investigation of protected monuments. Local folklore offered intriguing possibilities. Irish mythology describes Newgrange as Brúna Boinn, the dwelling of the Dagda, a primary deity associated with fertility and the earth. Legends speak of treasures hidden within the mound, magical objects that granted power over life and death. The hidden chamber might be the source of these stories. The most compelling evidence came from comparison with other passage tombs. Several monuments in the Boyne Valley complex show similar acoustic anomalies, suggesting they might also contain hidden chambers. A pattern emerges. Outer chambers designed for light and ritual. Inner chambers sealed in darkness, possibly containing objects or materials deemed too sacred for ordinary access. The chamber remains sealed. The quartz continues its electromagnetic fluctuations, following patterns that change subtly with lunar cycles. And at Newgrange's core, in darkness that has lasted 5,000 years, crystalline structures wait in arrangements that suggest purposes beyond mere construction, purposes that the ancient builders sealed away from even the sacred solstice light. The massive stone platform at Baalbek contains blocks weighing up to 1,200 tons, moved by means still debated today. But ground-penetrating radar in 2018 revealed something equally impressive. A series of chambers carved into the bedrock beneath the platform. The chambers are perfectly rectangular, with walls so smooth that laser scanning can barely detect tool marks. Lebanese authorities have prohibited excavation, citing the structure's stability. The chambers remain sealed, their purpose unknown. Baalbek, known to Romans as Heliopolis, the city of the sun, sits in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley. The temple complex built by the Romans stands on foundations that predate Roman occupation by centuries, perhaps millennia. The foundation includes the famous trilithon, 3 stones each weighing approximately 800 tons, fitted together with joints so precise that paper cannot slip between them. But it was what lay beneath these impossible stones that the 2018 surveys revealed. Dr. Janine Abdul Masih from the Lebanese University led the ground-penetrating radar project. Her team was investigating soil composition for restoration planning when the equipment detected voids where solid bedrock should exist. The first chamber appeared on scans beneath the Temple of Jupiter's foundation. Rectangular in shape, measuring approximately 12 by 8 meters, the void sat at a depth of 15 meters below the platform's surface. The chamber's walls showed radar signatures consistent with cut stone, not natural cave formation. Further scanning revealed 5 more chambers, arranged in a pattern beneath the temple complex. Each chamber was rectangular. Each showed the same smooth wall signatures, and each appeared deliberately positioned relative to the temples above. The pattern suggested not random excavation, but planned construction following a specific design. Laser scanning through small boreholes provided more detail. The chamber walls were smooth to within tolerances of less than 5 millimeters across their entire surface. Creating such precision in bedrock excavation would challenge modern diamond cutting tools. Ancient workers using bronze or iron implements shouldn't have been capable of such accuracy. More puzzling were the chamber's dimensions. Each measured exactly 12 by 8 meters, maintaining identical proportions despite being carved separately. The dimensional consistency suggested standardized planning using measurement systems that indicated sophisticated mathematical knowledge. Lebanese authorities authorized limited borehole sampling in 2019. Core samples brought up fragments of limestone dust showing unusual characteristics. Chemical analysis revealed the dust contained trace elements of copper and tin, suggesting bronze tools had been used for carving. But the quantity of metal residue indicated thousands of hours of cutting, abrading rock with metal implements in ways that should have destroyed the tools long before chambers of this size could be completed. Temperature monitoring through the boreholes revealed another anomaly. The chambers maintained consistent temperatures approximately 5 degrees cooler than surrounding bedrock. The temperature stability suggested either air circulation through unseen passages or some property of the chamber's construction that created thermal insulation. Acoustic testing detected what sounded like water echo. Not flowing water, but the reverberant quality of sound in spaces containing standing pools or high humidity. Yet geological surveys showed no water table at the chamber's depth, no aquifer that could explain moisture presence. In 2020, electromagnetic surveys revealed unusual readings from one chamber. A concentration of magnetic material, possibly iron ore or magnetite, appeared to be arranged in linear patterns within the space. The patterns were too regular to be natural geological formations. Historical research offered potential context. Ancient texts describe Baalbek as a sacred site long before Roman construction. Phoenician accounts mention chambers of the old gods where sacred objects were kept. Jewish historian Flavius Josephus wrote vaguely about foundations laid by giants at the site. Most intriguing was a fragmentary Greek text from the 2nd century BCE, describing Baalbek as having treasuries carved before the temples, where the ancient ones sealed their wisdom. The text's author claimed the chambers predated even Phoenician occupation, attributing them to an earlier unknown civilization. Lebanese civil authorities maintain their prohibition on excavation. The official position emphasizes that any digging beneath the platform risks destabilizing temples that have stood for 2 millennia. The chambers remain sealed, accessible only to radar pulses and borehole instruments. But researchers who've examined the data note something peculiar. The chamber's arrangement, when mapped, forms a pattern that mirrors the constellation Orion, the same stellar configuration that appears at sites from Egypt to Mexico to Cambodia. As if the ancient builders, whoever they were, followed a template that transcended cultures and continents. In 2016, researchers discovered a cenote, a natural sinkhole, directly beneath the pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza. But the cenote isn't natural. Sonar mapping revealed that it had been modified, with carved walls and a platform that doesn't match any known Maya construction technique. Diving to the platform's depth would require technical equipment and Mexican permits that have been repeatedly denied. The discovery came from a project led by Dr. René Chavez Segura from Mexico's National Autonomous University. His team was using ground-penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography to study the pyramid's foundation stability. The cenote appeared on their surveys as a void approximately 20 meters beneath the pyramid's base. Cenotes are common in the Yucatan Peninsula. The limestone bedrock is riddled with underground rivers and sinkholes. The Maya considered cenotes sacred, viewing them as portals to Xibalba, the underworld. Finding a cenote beneath Kukulkan wasn't surprising. What it contained was initial sonar mapping through small boreholes revealed the cenote's structure, roughly circular, approximately 35 meters in diameter, filled with water to a depth of about 20 meters, standard characteristics for a cenote. But the walls weren't naturally formed limestone. They showed signs of deliberate carving and shaping. More detailed sonar revealed the platform. It sat 15 meters below the water's surface, extending from the cenote's wall toward its center. The platform was approximately 3 meters wide and 8 meters long, built from cut stones that appeared to be fitted together without mortar. Dr. Guillermo de Anda, an underwater archaeologist, examined the sonar data. The platform's construction doesn't match classic Maya stonework. The blocks are larger, more precisely fitted. The technique resembles earlier pre-classic construction, but even that's not quite right. 3-dimensional sonar mapping showed more details. The platform ended at a stone wall, vertical and smooth, that appeared to be covering an opening in the cenote's side. The wall showed what might be carved glyphs, though sonar resolution wasn't sufficient to make out details. Mexican authorities initially permitted preliminary diving assessment. A team descended in 2017, reaching the platform's upper edge before being ordered back to the surface. The divers reported that the platform's stones were covered in calcite deposits suggesting great age, possibly predating the pyramid above, but they saw something else in their brief time at depth. The carved wall at the platform's end showed symbols, not Maya glyphs, but geometric patterns they didn't recognize. And in one corner, what appeared to be a rectangular outline, possibly a doorway that had been sealed with stone blocks. After the dive, Mexican authorities revoked excavation permits. The National Institute of Anthropology and History issued a statement citing concerns about the pyramid's stability. Any diving operations involving lights, equipment, and potential excavation work might vibrate the cenote's structure, potentially affecting the pyramid's foundation. But divers on the project described a different concern. Officials seemed troubled by what the preliminary photographs showed. The geometric symbols on the sealed entrance didn't match any known Maya iconography. They predated the pyramid, possibly by centuries or millennia. Local Maya traditions speak of Chichen Itza as a place where worlds meet. The stories mention a stone door beneath water that must never be opened. In 2019, electromagnetic surveys detected unusual readings from behind the sealed entrance. Metal, possibly copper or bronze, in quantities suggesting objects rather than trace minerals. The readings came from multiple points, arranged in patterns that appeared deliberate. Further sonar mapping revealed something more. The sealed entrance appeared to lead to a passage that extended horizontally into the bedrock. The passage continued beyond sonar range, heading toward the center of Chichen Itza's Great Plaza. The site remains closed to diving. Mexican authorities maintain that technical diving beneath a World Heritage Site poses unacceptable risks. The platform sits undisturbed, calcite slowly covering stones that were carved by hands unknown. Researchers noted one final detail in the survey data. The cenote's position isn't random. It sits at the exact geometric center of the pyramid's base, suggesting the pyramid was deliberately built over it. The Maya didn't discover the cenote during construction. They built Kukulkan to mark its location, to identify what lay sealed beneath the water, waiting in darkness that not even sunlight can penetrate. The massive stones of Sacsayhuaman fit together so precisely that a piece of paper can't slide between them. But ground-penetrating radar has revealed something even more impressive. A chamber system beneath the fortress, carved from solid bedrock. The chambers connect to natural cave systems that extend for miles. In 2021, spelunkers accidentally discovered one entrance and photographed carved doorways and smooth walls before Peruvian authorities sealed the cave. The photographs showed something else. Writing that doesn't match any known Incan script. Sacsayhuaman overlooks Cusco, Peru, its zigzag walls composed of stones weighing up to 200 tons each. Spanish chroniclers, who saw the fortress shortly after the conquest, expressed disbelief at its construction, attributing it to demons or giants rather than human builders. The ground-penetrating radar surveys began in 2015 as part of a conservation project. Dr. Arminda Gibaja, from Peru's Ministry of Culture, led the investigation. The surveys revealed voids beneath the visible structures, suggesting the fortress's foundations extended deeper than previously known. Initial results showed a chamber approximately 8 meters below the main terrace, rectangular in shape, measuring roughly 15 by 10 meters, with walls that appeared to be cut stone rather than natural cave formation. But that was just the beginning. More detailed scanning revealed a network. The initial chamber connected to passages that extended in multiple directions. Some passages led to other chambers, others descended deeper into the bedrock, and several appeared to connect with natural limestone caves that honeycombed the hill beneath Sacsayhuaman. The cave system had been known to local residents for generations. Stories spoke of tunnels that connected Sacsayhuaman to other Inca sites around Cusco. Underground passages that allowed secret movement throughout the capital. But authorities had sealed known entrances decades ago, citing safety concerns about unstable cave systems. In 2021, 3 experienced cave explorers found an unsealed entrance approximately 2 kilometers from Sacsayhuaman. The opening, hidden behind vegetation and rockfalls, led to a passage that descended into the hillside. The explorers followed it for approximately 200 meters before reaching a junction where multiple passages met. One passage showed clear signs of human modification. The walls were smooth, the ceiling arched, the floor level. The explorers followed this passage to a carved doorway. Beyond the doorway, a chamber with walls covered in symbols. The explorers photographed everything before ethical concerns led them to report the discovery. Peruvian authorities arrived within hours, documenting the location before sealing the entrance with concrete and steel barriers. But the photographs the explorers had taken sparked intense debate. The symbols carved into the chamber's walls didn't match Incan iconography. The writing system, if that's what it was, showed characteristics more similar to ancient scripts from the Mediterranean or Middle East than anything known from the Americas. Dr. Luis Lumbreras, a specialist in pre-Columbian archaeology, examined the photographs. The symbols show organization and repetition, consistent with written language, but they don't match any known American writing system. Not Inca quipu knots, not Maya glyphs, not even the undeciphered scripts of ancient Colombia. More troubling was what the photographs showed about the chamber's construction. The walls weren't just smooth, they showed a polished finish that suggested techniques beyond simple stone carving. In several areas, the rock appeared to have been melted or fused rather than cut. Subsequent ground-penetrating radar focused on the sealed cave entrance. The surveys confirmed that the passage connected to the chamber system beneath Sacsayhuaman. The carved doorways the explorers photographed were part of a larger complex extending throughout the hillside. Peruvian authorities issued statements emphasizing that unauthorized cave exploration endangered both the explorers and archaeological heritage. The sealed entrance would remain closed indefinitely. No official excavation was planned, but researchers who examined the radar data noted something significant. The chamber system beneath Sacsayhuaman was larger than the visible fortress above. Dozens of rooms, connected by passages, some natural and some clearly carved. The complex suggested not just a fortress but a multi-level structure, most of which remained hidden underground. Inca legends speak of underground temples where the most sacred rituals occurred. Stories describe chambers where gold from across the empire was hidden during the Spanish conquest, and older tales mention a time before the Inca, when earlier peoples carved temples into the living rock. The sealed entrance remains closed. The photographs of undeciphered writing circulate among researchers who wonder what language they show, what information they might contain. And beneath Sacsayhuaman's impossible walls, in chambers carved from bedrock by unknown hands, writing waits in darkness to tell stories that might predate the Inca Empire by centuries or millennia. The Taj Mahal's foundation contains 22 rooms that have been sealed since construction. Official records describe them as simple structural supports, but a 2015 court petition demanded they be opened for inspection. The Indian government refused, citing structural concerns. Ground-penetrating radar conducted before the court case revealed that several of the rooms contain objects, and one room has a chamber beneath it, accessible only through the floor. The petition was dismissed. The rooms remain sealed. The Taj Mahal, built by Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan between 1632 and 1653, as a tomb for his wife, Mumtaz Mahal, stands as one of the world's most recognized monuments. But its foundation has remained a subject of controversy and mystery since construction. The 22 sealed rooms exist in the structure's platform, the massive marble base upon which the iconic dome sits. Historical records describe these as chambers designed to prevent ground moisture from damaging the tomb structure. Dr. P. N. Oak, a controversial Indian historian, filed the 2015 petition, claiming the Taj Mahal was actually built over a pre-existing Hindu temple dedicated to Shiva. The sealed rooms, he argued, contained evidence of earlier construction that would challenge the accepted history. The Archaeological Survey of India opposed the petition, arguing that opening the rooms would compromise the monument's structural integrity. But they authorized limited ground-penetrating radar surveys to address the court's questions about the room's contents. The radar surveys revealed something unexpected. While most of the 22 rooms appeared empty or filled with rubble, 4 showed signatures consistent with objects inside. The object sizes varied, but several appeared to be large, possibly stone sculptures or architectural elements. More significantly, one room showed a void beneath its floor. A chamber, approximately 3 meters square, accessible only through what appeared to be a sealed entrance in the room's floor. The subchamber's existence wasn't mentioned in any historical construction records. Dr. Marvin Mills from the University of Texas examined the survey data as an expert witness. The radar clearly shows constructed spaces, not just support vaults. The subchamber is particularly interesting because its position doesn't serve any structural purpose. It's there for another reason. The survey also detected unusual wall thickness in several rooms. While most chambers showed walls consistent with structural support, 2 rooms had walls twice as thick as necessary for load bearing. The excess thickness suggested the walls themselves might be hollow, possibly containing concealed spaces. Thermal imaging conducted separately showed temperature anomalies in several sealed room locations. The areas remained cooler than surrounding structure, suggesting either air circulation or water presence. But no water infiltration had ever been detected in these areas during maintenance inspections. Historical research provided intriguing context. French traveller Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, who visited the Taj Mahal in 1665, wrote of treasure rooms beneath the monument where the emperor's wealth lay protected. His account was generally dismissed as exaggeration or misunderstanding, but Mughal records from Shah Jahan's reign mention sacred chambers within the Taj Mahal's foundation, rooms designated for objects of religious significance. The records don't specify what these objects were or why they needed sealed storage. The court petition generated public interest and media coverage. Amateur historians proposed various theories: that the rooms contained treasure sealed during construction, that they held Hindu artifacts from the supposed pre-existing temple, that they concealed evidence of construction techniques that would challenge accepted narratives. The Archaeological Survey of India's position remained firm. The sealed rooms were structural elements. Opening them would risk destabilizing the monument, and no compelling reason justified such risk. The court agreed, dismissing the petition in 2016, but questions persisted. If the rooms were simple support chambers, why seal them so completely? Why build chambers with subchambers that serve no structural purpose? Why do some rooms show evidence of objects while others appear empty? In 2018, conservation workers reported hearing sounds from the sealed room areas during maintenance work. Described as echoes or resonances, the sounds occurred during specific times of day, possibly related to temperature changes causing expansion and contraction in the sealed spaces. Independent researcher Rajiv Malhotra obtained the survey data through information requests. His analysis suggested that the objects visible in radar scans might be large stone sculptures or carved panels. The shapes were too regular to be construction rubble or structural elements. The rooms remain sealed. The subchamber sits unexplored beneath the foundation. And in the Taj Mahal, one of the world's most photographed buildings, mysteries persist in sealed darkness beneath the marble perfection visible to millions of visitors each year. The secret chamber at Delphi. The Oracle of Delphi sat above a geological fault that released ethylene gas, explaining her prophetic trances. But excavations in 2018 revealed something more: a chamber carved into the rock directly beneath the temple's inner sanctuary. The chamber is small, barely 2 meters square, but its walls are covered in writing that predates classical Greek by at least 500 years. Greek authorities sealed the chamber after initial documentation. The full translation of the writing has never been published. Delphi served as ancient Greece's most important oracle site for over 1,000 years. Pilgrims from across the Mediterranean sought the Pythia's prophecies, delivered in trance states, now attributed to naturally occurring gases seeping through fissures in the earth. The 2018 excavation was part of ongoing research into the oracle's geological setting. Dr. Ian Stewart from the University of Edinburgh led a team investigating fault lines beneath the temple ruins. Ground-penetrating radar revealed an anomaly directly beneath the Adyton, the innermost sanctuary where the Pythia delivered her prophecies. Initial surveys suggested a natural cavity in the limestone bedrock, but when excavators reached the space, they found something clearly artificial. A chamber, roughly cubic, carved with precision that seemed inconsistent with Bronze Age tools. The chamber's walls were smooth, showing tool marks that suggested metal implements. But more significantly, 3 walls were covered in text. Not classical Greek inscriptions, but writing in an earlier script that researchers identified as Linear B, the writing system used by Mycenaean Greeks centuries before the classical period. Dr. Dimitris Nakasis, a specialist in Bronze Age Greek scripts, was called to document the inscriptions. The text is definitely Linear B, but the content is unlike anything we've seen from Mycenaean tablets. It's not accounting records or administrative lists. This is something else entirely. The inscriptions appeared to be instructions or descriptions related to the oracle site. The text mentioned vapors from the depths, the sacred fissure, and prophecies from the Earth Mother, but there were other phrases that didn't fit expected oracle ritual contexts. One section, photographed before the chamber was sealed, described the breath that opens sight beyond. Another mentioned the stones that sing when Earth moves. The text suggested knowledge of geological phenomena that wouldn't be scientifically understood for millennia. Most intriguing was a section that appeared to be a list. 7 items, each described with phrases that might be locations or objects. One phrase translated roughly as, "where the rivers meet beneath the ground." Another read, "the cave of eternal ice, where the old knowledge sleeps." Greek authorities sealed the chamber within days of its discovery. The official statement mentioned concerns about exposure to air, causing rapid deterioration of the ancient text. Photography and documentation were completed, but analysis would be conducted using the images rather than in situ examination. But researchers who worked on the project described another concern. Some phrases in the text suggested the ancient Greeks had knowledge that seemed impossible for their time. Descriptions of earth fires that sleep beneath mountains sounded like volcanic activity understood in modern geological terms. References to the great shaking that swallows cities described earthquake mechanisms accurately. The chamber's position was also significant. Directly beneath where the Pythia sat to deliver prophecies, the small carved space would have been below her feet as she inhaled the ethylene gases, as if the ancient creators of this chamber understood the geological source of the oracular visions. Dr. John Hale, a geologist who studied Delphi's fault systems, examined the chamber's construction. It's positioned exactly at the intersection of 2 fault lines. The carvers knew precisely where to dig to reach the point where gas emissions would be strongest. In 2019, a partial translation of the inscriptions was published in a Greek archaeological journal. The translation was heavily redacted, with officials noting that certain sections require additional analysis before public release. The published sections confirmed the text, discussed oracle practices and geological features, but researchers who saw the unpublished sections described content that raised questions about the extent of ancient Greek knowledge. References to sites across the Mediterranean, descriptions of other oracle locations, and most puzzling, mentions of the elder tongue that the text claimed predated even Linear B. The chamber remained sealed, accessible only in photographs and survey data. And beneath Delphi's ruins, where the Pythia once channeled prophecies from vapours rising through fractured stone, inscriptions wait in darkness, telling stories of knowledge that challenges our understanding of how much the ancient world truly knew. Extended segments, 21:2, 5500 words each. The sealed room at Pumapunku. Pumapunku's precisely cut stones have puzzled researchers for decades, but ground-penetrating radar in 2019 revealed something that might explain the precision. A chamber beneath the site, containing what appears to be a workshop. The radar signatures suggest stone blocks in various stages of cutting, and objects that might be tools. Bolivian authorities have banned excavation, citing the site's sacred status to indigenous communities. The chamber's contents remain unknown, sealed beneath tons of earth and broken stones. Pumapunku, part of the larger Tiwanaku complex in Bolivia, features some of the most precisely engineered stones in the ancient world. The blocks show drill holes, perfectly flat surfaces, and complex interlocking joints that rival modern machining tolerances. How the Tiwanaku people achieved this precision, around 500 to 600 CE, has remained one of archaeology's enduring questions. The 2019 survey was conducted by Dr. Alexei Vranic from the University of California. His team used ground-penetrating radar to map the subsurface structures beneath Pumapunku's scattered stones. The workshop chamber appeared approximately 8 meters below the visible ruins. The chamber's dimensions suggested a workspace rather than a tomb or storage room. Roughly 12 by 15 meters, with what appeared to be a level floor and walls that showed the same precision as the stones above. But it was the chamber's contents that caught the researchers' attention. Radar signatures showed numerous objects within the space. Several appeared to be stone blocks of varying sizes, arranged in rows that suggested organization rather than random collapse. The blocks' positions and dimensions indicated they might be in different stages of completion, from rough cut to finished. More intriguing were smaller objects clustered in one corner of the chamber. The radar showed dense concentrations of material with signatures consistent with metal or very hard stone. The objects' sizes and shapes suggested they might be tools. implements used for the precise stoneworking visible throughout Pumapunku. Three-dimensional mapping revealed another feature. What appeared to be a stone table or work surface, approximately 3 meters long, positioned at the chamber's center. The surface showed unusual radar characteristics, reflecting signals in ways that suggested an extremely flat, smooth plane. Dr. Vranic proposed a theory based on the evidence. If this is a workshop, it would revolutionize our understanding of Tiwanaku stoneworking. The presence of tools and partially finished blocks suggests they had a systematic approach, possibly using techniques we haven't yet identified. Bolivian authorities reviewed the findings but prohibited any excavation. The decision came after consultation with indigenous communities, for whom Tiwanaku holds profound spiritual significance. The official statement emphasized that the site's sacred nature superseded archaeological curiosity. But there was another consideration. If the chamber contained evidence of advanced tool technology, it would challenge narratives about pre-Columbian technological capabilities. The precision at Pumapunku has already generated controversial theories about ancient civilizations having lost knowledge or even extraterrestrial contact. Magnetometer surveys conducted separately detected strong magnetic anomalies within the chamber. The readings suggested iron-rich materials, possibly hematite or magnetite, in concentrations that seemed deliberately placed. Iron tools would be unexpected at Tiwanaku, where copper and bronze were the typical metals. Acoustic testing through boreholes revealed something else. When researchers generated sound waves directed at the chamber, they detected unusual resonances. The chamber appeared to amplify certain frequencies, creating acoustic effects that some researchers compared to modern sound chambers. Local Aymara traditions speak of ancestors who spoke to stones and convinced them to take desired shapes. While dismissed as metaphor by most archaeologists, some researchers wonder if the stories preserve memories of techniques that involved sound or vibration in stoneworking. In 2021, thermal imaging showed the chamber maintained a constant temperature despite surface variations. The stability suggested either excellent insulation or air circulation through passages too small for radar detection. Dr. Jean-Pierre Protzen, who spent decades studying Inca stonework, examined the survey data. If there are tools down there showing how they achieved such precision, it would be the most significant archaeological discovery in Andean studies in 50 years. The chamber remains sealed. The tools, if that's what they are, rest untouched beneath the scattered stones of Pumapunku, and the mystery of how ancient people achieved precision that challenges modern technology continues, with potential answers lying meters below ground in a workshop that hasn't seen light for 15 centuries. The hidden chamber at Mesa Verde. Mesa Verde's cliff dwellings are well documented, but ground-penetrating radar in 2020 revealed something unexpected. A chamber carved deep into the cliff face behind the visible structures. The chamber isn't accessible from any known passage and appears to have been sealed before the dwellings were abandoned around 1300 CE. The radar signatures suggest the chamber contains objects, possibly baskets or pottery. But there's something else. A concentrated area of metal that reads like copper, but in quantities that seem impossible for the period. The discovery came during a National Park Service conservation survey. Dr. Shelley Tiley led the ground-penetrating radar study, focused on assessing cliff stability behind the famous Cliff Palace dwelling. The chamber appeared on scans as a distinct void approximately 15 meters behind the visible rooms. The chamber's position was immediately puzzling. It sat deep within the cliff face, with no visible entrance from the dwellings built into the alcove. The ancient Puebloans would have needed to carve through solid sandstone to create the space, then seal it so completely that no access remained. The chamber measured approximately 4 by 6 meters, with a ceiling height of about 2 meters. Radar showed what appeared to be objects arranged along the walls, their signatures consistent with organic materials like woven baskets or wooden containers. The ancestral Puebloans were master basket weavers, creating intricate containers for storage and ceremony. But the metal concentration caught everyone by surprise. A dense area approximately 1 meter square showed radar characteristics consistent with copper or copper alloy. The quantity suggested not small ornaments or tools, but a substantial mass of metal. Dr. Steve Lexon from the University of Colorado examined the data. The ancestral Puebloans worked with copper, but in small quantities for ornaments and bells. They didn't smelt or cast large objects. This amount of metal doesn't fit the archaeological record. The survey team proposed using borehole cameras to examine the chamber's interior. The National Park Service denied the request, citing policies against invasive investigation of cliff dwellings. The structure's stability and preservation took precedence over archaeological curiosity, but there was more to the decision. Park officials noted that Mesa Verde holds deep significance for modern Pueblo peoples who trace their ancestry to the cliff dwellers. Disturbing sealed chambers could violate cultural protocols about disturbing ancestral spaces. Chemical analysis through non-invasive means detected elevated copper levels in the cliff face near the chamber. The concentration was highest directly adjacent to the sealed space, suggesting whatever metal lay inside was affecting the surrounding sandstone through slow chemical processes. Further radar surveys revealed something unexpected. The chamber appeared to connect to a narrow shaft extending upward through the cliff. The shaft was too small for human passage but might allow air circulation. It emerged on the cliff top, approximately 30 meters above the dwellings, marked by what appeared to be a deliberately placed stone. Pueblo oral traditions speak of sacred objects sealed in hidden places when the ancestors left Mesa Verde. The stories describe chambers where ceremonial items were protected from those who might misuse them, places that would remain closed until the proper time for their revelation. In 2021, thermal imaging detected a temperature anomaly at the chamber's location. The sealed space registered 4 degrees cooler than surrounding cliff face, suggesting either air movement through the vertical shaft or some property of the chamber's contents affecting heat retention. Archaeologist Catherine Cameron, who has studied Mesa Verde's abandonment, noted the timing. The chamber was sealed around 1300 CE, right when the cliff dwellings were being abandoned. Whatever they left there was important enough to protect as they departed. The most intriguing detail came from acoustic testing. Researchers generated sound waves directed at the chamber and detected unusual resonances. The chamber amplified certain frequencies, particularly lower tones, creating effects that some compared to ceremonial drums. The metal concentration's purpose remains speculative. Some researchers suggest it might be a cache of copper tools or ornaments, sealed for future retrieval that never occurred. Others propose ceremonial objects made from copper, obtained through trade networks extending to the Great Lakes region. The chamber remains sealed behind the sandstone cliff. The metal waits in darkness, surrounded by what might be baskets woven 7 centuries ago. And at Mesa Verde, where tourists photograph cliff dwellings in golden afternoon light, mysteries persist in sealed spaces carved by people who vanished, leaving questions carved in stone and sealed in darkness. The hidden passages of Cahokia. Cahokia Mounds in Illinois was once the largest city in North America, home to 20,000 people. Ground-penetrating radar surveys in 2017 revealed a network of tunnels beneath Monk's Mound, the largest earthen pyramid north of Mexico. The tunnels are too regular to be natural and appear to connect to a central chamber. Excavation permits have been repeatedly denied due to the site's sacred status. But one tunnel section was accidentally exposed during erosion control in 2019, revealing carved walls and steps leading down into darkness. Cahokia flourished between 1050 and 1350 CE, serving as a major urban center for the Mississippian culture. Monk's Mound, rising 100 feet above the surrounding floodplain, dominated the city's landscape. The massive earthwork contains approximately 814,000 cubic yards of soil, all moved by basket load. The 2017 survey was conducted by Dr. Melissa Baltus from the University of Toledo. Her team used ground-penetrating radar to assess soil stability and map internal structure. The tunnel network appeared as linear voids extending through the mound's interior. The tunnels weren't simple gaps in the earthwork. They showed consistent dimensions, roughly 1.5 meters wide and 2 meters high, extending for distances up to 50 meters. The regularity suggested deliberate construction rather than natural settling or erosion channels. More significantly, several tunnels appeared to converge at a central point within the mound. The junction created what looked like a chamber, approximately 6 meters in diameter, positioned at the mound's geometric center, about 15 meters below the summit. The 2019 exposure happened during heavy rains that caused erosion on the mound's western face. Park maintenance workers discovered that the erosion had revealed a tunnel opening. Before authorities could seal it, several photographs and videos were taken showing the tunnel's interior. The images showed walls that weren't simple compressed earth. They were lined with clay that had been smoothed and possibly fired, creating surfaces resistant to collapse. The floor showed stone paving, flat rocks carefully placed to create a walkable surface. And at the visible section's end, steps descended into darkness. Dr. Thomas Emerson from the Illinois State Archaeological Survey examined the photographs. The construction sophistication is remarkable. These weren't simple burrows or drainage channels. Someone engineered these passages for human use. The discovery generated interest from multiple Native American tribes with ancestral connections to Cahokia. Representatives from the Osage Nation and other groups met with site officials, expressing concerns about disturbing sacred spaces. The tunnel was sealed with the tribe's approval, using materials that could be removed if future collaborative research was agreed upon. But the photographs had revealed something else. The tunnel walls showed what appeared to be carvings or paintings, markings too unclear in the images to identify definitively, but suggesting decoration or symbolic notation. Archaeological records provided context. Cahokia's residents built elaborate ceremonial structures and practiced complex burial customs. The discovery of mass graves and evidence of human sacrifice indicated that religious practices involved underground spaces and hidden rituals. Magnetic surveys detected anomalies within the central chamber. The readings suggested either fired clay concentrations or possibly copper objects. Cahokia's residents worked with copper from Great Lakes sources, creating ornamental objects and ceremonial items. In 2020, acoustic testing revealed something unexpected. Sound directed into the sealed tunnel entrance produced echoes, suggesting the passage system was more extensive than radar indicated. The sound bounced back with delays consistent with spaces extending beyond the central chamber, possibly connecting to multiple areas within the mound. Local oral traditions, preserved in tribes descended from Mississippian peoples, speak of earth lodges where leaders communed with spirits. The stories describe underground passages leading to chambers where sacred objects were kept, places where ordinary people were forbidden to enter. The most intriguing evidence came from comparing Cahokia to other Mississippian sites. Similar tunnel systems might exist beneath other mounds, but few sites have been surveyed with modern equipment. The patterns at Cahokia might represent a common but undiscovered feature of Mississippian ceremonial architecture. The tunnel remains sealed. The central chamber sits unexplored beneath tons of earth. And at Cahokia, where the Great Mound rises above the Mississippi River floodplain, mysteries persist in darkness that hasn't been disturbed since the city's abandonment 7 centuries ago, when its people departed and sealed their secrets beneath the earth they'd so carefully shaped. The sealed chamber at Palenque. In 2016, muon tomography revealed a hidden chamber deep within the Temple of the Inscriptions at Palenque. The chamber sits below the known tomb of King Pakal and appears to predate it. Initial scans suggested the chamber contained objects and possibly human remains. Mexican authorities authorized limited drilling for fiber optic cameras. The project was cancelled after the first borehole was completed. No official explanation was given. The footage from that camera has never been released. The Temple of the Inscriptions houses one of Mesoamerica's most famous archaeological discoveries, the tomb of Kinich Janab Pakal, who ruled Palenque from 615 to 683 CE. Discovered in 1952 by Alberto Ruzluilier, the tomb contained Pakal's remains in an elaborately carved sarcophagus, surrounded by jade ornaments and ceremonial objects. But the 2016 muon tomography scans suggested the temple held more secrets. The technology, similar to that used in scanning the Egyptian pyramids, detected a void beneath Pakal's burial chamber. The void measured approximately 4 by 5 meters, positioned at a depth that would place it near the temple's foundation level. Dr. Arnoldo González Cruz, who has studied Palenque for decades, led the investigation. The chamber's position is significant. It's directly below Pakal's tomb, but appears to be part of an earlier construction phase. The temple may have been built over a pre-existing structure. Mexican authorities approved a careful investigation. A drilling team created a small borehole, barely 5 centimeters in diameter. Designed to allow insertion of a fiber optic camera, the drilling process took 2 days, carefully penetrating through stone and fill material. When the borehole reached the chamber, a fiber optic camera was lowered. The device transmitted images for approximately 15 minutes before the operation was terminated. Personnel on site during the filming were required to sign non-disclosure agreements. The camera was withdrawn, and the borehole was sealed with concrete. The official statement from the National Institute of Anthropology and History simply noted that preliminary investigation has been completed and the results require further analysis before any additional work proceeds. No timeline for that additional work was provided. 5 years later, no further investigation has been authorized, but details leaked from site workers who witnessed the operation. The camera reportedly showed a chamber with walls covered in stucco and paint, similar to Palenque's other decorated spaces, but the artistic style didn't match Pakal's period. The imagery appeared older, possibly from Palenque's early classic period or even earlier. More significantly, the camera reportedly revealed objects on the chamber floor, stone vessels or containers, possibly ceramic urns, and in one corner, what appeared to be bundled remains, possibly mummies or bodies prepared for burial in ways different from Pakal's elaborate tomb. Dr. Guillermo Bernal Romero, a specialist in Maya hieroglyphics, was consulted about glyphs reportedly visible in the camera footage. He declined to discuss details but noted in a conference presentation that earlier inscriptions at Palenque sometimes refer to rulers or events not recorded in later texts. The chamber's existence raised profound questions about Palenque's history. Maya cities often built new structures atop older ones, creating layers of construction spanning centuries. But sealed chambers within temple pyramids were rare, suggesting special significance. Maya cosmology viewed pyramids as sacred mountains, places where the human and divine worlds intersected. Hidden chambers might represent entrances to Xibalba, the underworld, or repositories for objects too sacred for ordinary access. In 2018, ground-penetrating radar surveyed the temple more broadly. The results suggested the sealed chamber might connect to other voids, possibly a passage system within the temple's foundation, but Mexican authorities denied permits for further investigation. Archaeologist David Stewart noted the pattern. Palenque keeps revealing layers. Every answer creates new questions. The sealed chamber might explain things about the site's early history, or it might deepen the mystery. Local Maya communities expressed mixed feelings about the investigation. Others felt that sealed chambers should remain undisturbed, that ancient peoples sealed these spaces for reasons that should be respected. The chamber remains sealed. The borehole is filled with concrete, and deep within the Temple of the Inscriptions, beneath King Pakal's elaborate tomb, a room that predates his burial holds objects and possibly remains that might rewrite Palenque's history. If anyone is ever allowed to see what that fiber optic camera recorded in its 15 minutes of operation, the secret room in the Great Mosque of Damascus. During restoration work in 2009, workers discovered a sealed chamber in the Great Mosque of Damascus's foundation. The chamber predates the mosque's construction in 706 CE and appears to be part of a Roman temple that once stood on the site. Syrian authorities ordered the chamber sealed immediately, citing security concerns, but photographs taken by workers before the sealing show carved inscriptions and what appears to be an entrance to a lower level. The civil war has prevented any further investigation. The Great Mosque of Damascus, known as the Umayyad Mosque, was built on a site with layers of religious history. A temple to Jupiter stood there during Roman rule, later converted to a Christian church dedicated to John the Baptist, before being transformed into one of Islam's most important mosques. The 2009 discovery happened during foundation stabilization work. A restoration crew was excavating beneath the mosque's southeastern corner when their equipment broke through into a void. Initial examination revealed a chamber approximately 3 by 4 meters, carved from stone blocks that clearly predated Islamic construction. The chamber's walls showed characteristics consistent with Roman masonry. Large, precisely fitted stones, using techniques typical of 1st century CE construction. But the chamber wasn't empty space. It had been deliberately preserved, integrated into the mosque's foundation, rather than simply filled and built over. Syrian antiquities officials were notified immediately. Dr. Bassam Jamous, then director of Damascus Museums, arrived to assess the discovery. He ordered documentation before any decision about further investigation. Workers were given permission to photograph the chamber, while officials determined next steps. The photographs showed 3 walls covered in inscriptions. The text appeared to be Latin, with some Greek characters intermixed. Religious symbols were carved alongside the text, including what appeared to be early Christian iconography, predating the 4th century recognition of Christianity in Rome. More significantly, one photograph showed the chamber's floor. At its center, a stone slab with an iron ring suggested something beneath. The slab appeared designed to be lifted, revealing access to a lower level. Before detailed documentation could be completed, Syrian authorities ordered the chamber sealed. The official explanation cited structural concerns about the mosque's foundation, but security officials noted that publicizing discoveries beneath one of Islam's holiest sites could create sectarian tensions. The chamber was filled with sand and sealed with concrete. All photographs and documentation were classified. Foreign researchers who expressed interest in examining the findings were denied access to the data, but several photographs had already circulated among the restoration workers. Digital copies reached researchers outside Syria, who analysed the images despite their unofficial status. Dr. Warwick Ball, a specialist in Roman Syria, examined the leaked photographs. The inscriptions appear to reference Jupiter Damascenus, the syncretic deity worshipped in Damascus during Roman rule, but some phrases suggest mystery cult practices, secret rites that wouldn't normally be documented in visible temple inscriptions. The chamber's position was also significant. It sat directly beneath the mosque's prayer hall, in an area tradition associates with John the Baptist's shrine. Christian pilgrims believe the mosque contains John's head, preserved in a reliquary. The sealed chamber's connection to this sacred space raised questions about what Roman or early Christian artifacts it might contain. In 2011, Syria descended into civil war. The mosque suffered damage from fighting, though less than many other historical sites. Any possibility of further archaeological investigation vanished amid the conflict. Researchers who saw the photographs noted details about the floor slab. The iron ring appeared to be original Roman metalwork, not a later addition. The slab's edges showed wear patterns suggesting it had been opened repeatedly in antiquity, then sealed permanently at some point. Historical records provided tantalizing hints. Roman sources mention temples in Damascus, with underground sanctuaries where mystery rites occurred. Early Christian texts reference hidden chambers where sacred objects were concealed during persecutions. The most intriguing photograph showed a section of inscription that, when translated, read, "What lies beneath must rise when the appointed time comes." The phrase suggested whatever was sealed in the lower level was meant for eventual discovery. The chamber remains filled and sealed. The civil war's aftermath has left Syrian antiquities authorities focused on more immediate preservation concerns. And beneath the Great Mosque of Damascus, in a Roman chamber that witnessed centuries of religious transformation, inscriptions and a sealed entrance wait in sand-filled darkness for investigation that may never come. The secret chamber of the Parthenon. Beneath the Parthenon's floor lies a chamber that wasn't discovered until 2017. When seismic monitoring equipment detected a void beneath the central cellar. The chamber, approximately 6 meters square, appears to predate the temple's construction in 447 BCE. It's carved from the bedrock with precision that seems impossible for the period. Greek authorities have prohibited excavation, stating that any work might destabilize the ancient structure, but thermal imaging has detected something inside, a temperature variation that suggests the chamber isn't empty. The Parthenon has stood for nearly 2,500 years as the ultimate symbol of classical perfection, the harmony of mathematics, myth, and marble. Built atop the Acropolis in honor of Athena Parthenos, goddess of wisdom, it embodies the zenith of Greek architecture. Yet in 2017, a team monitoring Athens' seismic activity detected an anomaly that hinted at something profoundly unclassical, a secret space below the floor of the world's most measured monument. The discovery came from vibration data, not archaeology. Sensors installed to monitor microtremors showed an irregular echo beneath the cellar, the temple's inner sanctuary, where Phidias's colossal statue of Athena once stood. When researchers used acoustic tomography to map the echo, they found a perfectly rectangular void, 6 meters across and 4 meters high, cut directly into the limestone plateau. The orientation matched the temple's east-west axis with uncanny precision. What startled engineers was not the size, but the workmanship. The void's angles were exact, its interior walls so smooth that radar reflections returned almost no signal, scatter a degree of polish rivaling modern machining. In a structure predating the Parthenon itself, that level of craftsmanship seemed impossible. Some speculated it was an unfinished foundation chamber, but the bedrock beneath the Parthenon is solid, not the kind of layered stone that would require hollow stabilization. When infrared thermography was later performed from the cellar floor, the results deepened the mystery. Even after sunset, the area above the void retained heat differently from surrounding marble. Within the chamber, readings suggested internal surfaces of varying temperature, an indication that something inside absorbed and radiated heat unevenly. Whatever lay within was not simply air or empty rock. Historians recalled ancient rumors of a sanctum of Athena Ergene, a secret shrine said to predate the temple and preserve offerings from an earlier cult. Some sources describe an underground naos containing votive relics from the Bronze Age relics, too sacred to expose to light. The chamber's placement beneath the statue's original location fits those myths precisely. Archaeologists also point to the Acropolis's long history of rebuilding. Before the Parthenon, an earlier temple stood on the same spot destroyed by the Persians in 480 BCE. It's possible the chamber belonged to that earlier sanctuary and was entombed when Pericles' architects laid new foundations. But if that's true, then the craftsmanship predates the classical period by at least a generation closer to Mycenaean engineering than Athenian marble work. The Greek Ministry of Culture, wary of structural damage, has forbidden drilling or entry. The Parthenon's weight is immense. Even minimal disturbance could shift the foundation blocks that have held for millennia. Still, non-invasive scans continue. In 2021, muon tomography, a technique that measures subatomic particle absorption, confirmed the chamber's hollow core and detected denser material at its center, possibly bronze or stone. That finding rekindled an old legend that beneath Athena's statue lies a votive mirror of her divine power, a relic placed before the city's founding. Some scholars believe it may be a ceremonial stele or bronze basin from the Mycenaean citadel that once crowned the Acropolis before Athens itself existed. For now, the chamber remains sealed beneath the world's most studied ruin, unseen, unentered, untouched. Tourists walk across the marble floor, unaware that 6 meters below, an older Athens may still rest in darkness, holding the city's first prayer to its goddess. The Parthenon, it seems, still guards one last secret. Not above its columns where perfection meets the sky, but beneath its feet, where memory has been carved into stone and then forgotten. The hidden vault at Carnac, the Carnac stones in France stand in mysterious rows stretching for miles. But ground-penetrating radar in 2015 revealed something equally mysterious. A chamber beneath the largest stone grouping. The chamber appears to be man-made, carved from bedrock and sealed with carefully placed stones. French authorities have prohibited excavation, stating that the site's archaeology is too delicate. Magnetometer surveys have detected a concentration of metal objects inside the chamber, arranged in a circular pattern. The alignment of Karnak's 3,000 standing stones has puzzled researchers for centuries. Some see a calendar of the sky, others a map of the earth. But the radar discovery beneath Le Menec, the site's densest avenue of megaliths, suggests that its mystery extends below ground as well as above. The detected void lies 6 meters beneath the surface and roughly aligns with the center of the stone rows. Computer tomography images show regular walls and a circular depression about 4 meters wide. Archaeologists believe the vault could be a Neolithic chamber grave or ritual repository predating the megaliths by centuries. If true, it would mean that the builders of Carnac erected their monuments above an earlier sacred point, perhaps the burial of a founder or shaman. The circular magnetic pattern suggests metallic objects, bronze rings or iron tools arranged deliberately around a central axis. Their strong anomalies have resisted precise identification, implying that they might be alloyed or encased within stone containers. Local legends long spoke of a treasure under the menhirs, guarded by curses that turn those who dig to stone. The stories were dismissed as folk fantasy until radar returned a cavity exactly where the old farmers said it lay. For some in Brittany, this was confirmation that their ancestral warnings held truth older than memory. Subsequent magnetic surveys in 2016 and 2018 confirmed the presence of metals, but also recorded odd resonance patterns, suggesting that the vault is not solidly filled. Acoustic tests show a sub-frequency echo, typical of hollow stone chambers with arched ceilings. No known Neolithic tombs in Western Europe use such architecture, leading some engineers to speculate that the vault might be Bronze Age or even Proto-Celtic in origin. Despite international interest, France's Ministry of Culture has barred excavation to preserve the alignment's integrity. Any disturbance, they argue, could destabilize stones that have stood for 5,000 years. Instead, remote imaging continues under strict supervision. Results released quietly in 2021 show that the vault's orientation mirrors the azimuth of the summer solstice sunrise, a precision suggesting astronomical intent. If the chamber was indeed constructed to mark the cycle of light and dark, then Carnac's builders may have conceived their stone avenues as extensions of an older underground sanctuary, a literal axis mundi connecting earth and sky. The metal objects within could represent offerings to that cosmic order. For now, the vault remains sealed, its contents known only to machines that can see through stone. What rests beneath those endless rows may change how we see Europe's oldest monuments, not as isolated stones standing against time, but as markers above a hidden world of ritual and memory. The sealed chamber at Carnac. The Temple of Carnac is massive, covering over 200 acres. But there's a part of it that no tourist has ever seen, a chamber discovered in 2018 beneath the hypostyle hall. The chamber, identified through acoustic testing, appears to predate the hall's construction. Egyptian authorities sealed the area immediately and have refused all requests for investigation. The only information that's been released: the chamber is approximately 10 meters below the surface and appears to contain objects of archaeological significance. Karnak has been called a city of temples, a vast complex built, rebuilt, and expanded over 2,000 years. Beneath its monumental columns, archaeologists have traced layer after layer of construction, stretching back to the Middle Kingdom. But the 2018 discovery hinted at something even earlier, a buried remnant from before the known dynastic sequence. It began when engineers conducting vibration studies beneath the hypostyle hall noticed a faint acoustic anomaly. Sound pulses sent into the ground returned echoes inconsistent with the limestone bedrock. When they mapped the reflections, the data revealed a rectangular cavity nearly 20 meters long. Subsequent microgravimetric tests confirmed an internal void sealed by dense masonry. Within days, the Ministry of Antiquities ordered the site restricted. Unofficial reports from technicians on the project described unusual readings, areas of high magnetic concentration suggesting metal artifacts. That alone would be strange. The hypostyle hall dates to the 13th century BCE, but Egyptologists know of no metallic deposits sealed beneath its floor. If the chamber truly lies deeper, it may predate the hall by centuries, perhaps even to the time of Senusret I, when Karnak was first consecrated to Amun-Ra. Some scholars speculate that it could be a cache temple, a hidden repository for ritual implements buried during political turmoil. Ancient Egyptian priests sometimes sealed sacred objects underground to protect them from desecration. Others suggest something more enigmatic, a foundation tomb, an early prototype of the symbolic underworld chambers later mirrored in the Valley of the Kings. Architectural simulations based on the acoustic data show vaulted ceilings and smooth walls, suggesting deliberate construction rather than a natural fissure. If confirmed, the chamber's dimensions match the so-called House of the Hidden Sun mentioned in fragmentary Theban papyri texts, describing a pre-dynastic sanctuary buried beneath the pillars of heaven. Yet no excavation has followed. The official reason: risk of structural collapse in the hypostyle hall, whose 134 sandstone columns already bear immense stress. But many in Egypt's archaeological community believe the government fears looting or revelations that could rewrite temple chronology. Since 2020, seismic sensors have continued to monitor subtle vibrations from the sealed area. Occasionally, instruments register minute shifts, perhaps settling stone, perhaps something else. Remote muon tomography conducted in 2023 confirmed multiple solid forms within the cavity, one of which measures nearly 2 meters tall. Its density profile suggests carved stone, not metal. What those objects of archaeological significance truly are remains unknown. A forgotten statue of a lost god, an early cache of royal regalia, or the foundation deposit of the first sanctuary ever built on the Nile's east bank, beneath the blinding light of Karnac's columns, under centuries of prayer and sand, something ancient endures, sealed away from both sun and science. Until permission is granted, the chamber will remain an echo beneath the world's greatest temple, whispering of an Egypt older than history itself. The secret room at the Alhambra. In 2017, restoration workers at the Alhambra discovered a sealed room hidden behind a decorative wall panel. The room, approximately 4 meters square, had been deliberately concealed during original construction in the 14th century. Spanish authorities cleared the room's contents before allowing any documentation. The only official statement: the room contained materials related to the palace's history. But workers who saw inside, before the clearing, described carved chests and what appeared to be astronomical instruments unlike anything else found at the site. The Alhambra, jewel of Moorish Spain, is a palace where geometry and light become theology. Its walls are an encyclopedia of mathematics, rendered in stucco, perfect tessellations designed to reflect divine order. That a secret room existed within this symmetry astonished even experts. No surviving plans from the Nasrid dynasty mention such a chamber, and its concealment appears intentional rather than accidental. The discovery came during restoration of the Hall of the Kings, where centuries of repainting had obscured original plaster patterns. When conservators removed a damaged Muqarnas panel, they found a hollow resonance. Behind the plaster lay a stone arch sealed with lime and pigment identical to the 14th century original. The chamber's entrance had been hidden in plain sight for nearly 700 years. Workers described a floor of patterned tile intact, despite the centuries and walls lined with cedar panels carved in Arabic script. Some inscriptions, photographed before removal, appear to be fragments of astrological tables. References to planetary conjunctions dated to the 1,360 seconds. Among the objects reportedly removed were brass armillary rings, a wooden box inlaid with silver, and a set of charts depicting constellations as seen from the latitude of Granada. Historians now suspect the hidden room may have belonged to the court astronomer of Yusuf I or Muhammad V, an era when the Alhambra functioned as both royal palace and center of scientific study. Islamic scholars of the period pursued astronomy not only for navigation, but to determine the precise timing of prayer, eclipses, and festivals. The concealment might have followed the 1492 Christian conquest, when scientific instruments associated with Islamic cosmology were deemed heretical. An inventory written by early Spanish administrators mentions a chamber of devices discovered and resealed in the 16th century, possibly the same room. Yet all physical evidence was again removed, and official silence resumed. The few surviving photographs taken by restoration staff before clearance show shadows of shapes against the wall outlines where chests once stood, now empty. Architectural scanning in 2019 confirmed the void's precise dimensions: 4.2 by 4.1 meters, with a single vent shaft leading upward toward the dome of the Hall of the Kings. The alignment matches the celestial north, an orientation consistent with observatories of the Islamic Golden Age. If the room was indeed an observatory, it would be the only one known within a medieval palace, a symbol of the moment when art, faith, and science briefly coexisted before being buried by conquest. Today, visitors walk past its sealed wall, unaware that just behind the latticework lies a lost chapter of Andalusian knowledge. The instruments are gone, the carvings stored who knows where, but the silence remains a hidden echo of an age when the heavens themselves were measured from the heart of Granada. The hidden chamber at Borobudur. Indonesia's Borobudur Temple is the world's largest Buddhist monument, but ground-penetrating radar in 2019 revealed it sits atop something older. Beneath the foundation lies a chamber structure that predates the temple by at least 200 years. The chambers are arranged in a pattern that mirrors the temple's layout, but includes a central space that has no equivalent in the visible structure. Indonesian authorities have prohibited excavation, citing the temple's UNESCO status. The central chamber remains sealed, its purpose unknown. Borobudur rises from the lush plains of central Java, like a mountain carved from philosophy itself, 9 stacked terraces of volcanic stone, each lined with Buddha statues and carved reliefs mapping the path to enlightenment. Built in the 8th and 9th centuries under the Sailendra dynasty, the monument has long been regarded as a physical mandala, a 3-dimensional map of the Buddhist cosmos. Yet, what the radar images revealed beneath it suggests the visible temple may only be half the story. When a joint Indonesian-Japanese survey team conducted the 2019 scan, their aim was routine conservation to assess the monument's stability against earthquakes. Instead, the radar returned echoes of geometric voids 10 meters below the base. The subsurface data showed rectangular corridors branching from a circular central chamber, aligned precisely with the temple's main axis. The symmetry was too deliberate to be natural. Archaeologists believe these structures could represent an earlier sanctuary. If so, the builders of the later monument may have encased this earlier shrine within layers of new stone, transforming it into the foundation for their masterpiece. A literal embodiment of rebirth. Old Javanese texts provide tantalizing clues. The Samaratunga Chronicle mentions a sanctuary of silence buried beneath the Great Stupa, where relics of the Buddha's words were sealed in gold. No such chamber has ever been found, but the radar anomaly's position matches the description almost exactly. Local folklore also speaks of a womb of the earth, a hidden chamber where monks once meditated in perpetual darkness. Subsequent seismic tomography confirmed that the chamber is not empty. Density readings suggest the presence of solid masses, perhaps stone reliquaries or sculpted figures. Magnetometer sweeps detected faint metallic signatures, possibly from ritual objects of bronze or copper, but excavation is forbidden. Borobudur's UNESCO World Heritage status strictly prohibits invasive exploration that could destabilize the monument's delicate volcanic foundation. The refusal has only deepened the mystery. Some scholars argue that the chamber may hold foundation offerings placed by the original builders, sacred texts, gemstones, and metals intended to consecrate the temple's cosmic center. Others believe it could contain the remnants of an even older non-Buddhist structure, a megalithic shrine appropriated by the Sailendra kings when they embraced Buddhism. In 2022, drone-based gravimetry revealed subtle subsidence patterns above the hidden chamber, indicating internal hollows still intact after more than a millennium. Engineers proposed inserting microcameras through hairline cracks to capture images, but the Cultural Heritage Board declined. The risk, they said, was to history itself. For now, only digital maps and whispers hint at what lies below. Beneath Borobudur's thousands of carved panels depicting karmic cycles, beneath the terraces pilgrims circle in meditation, there may rest another monument, a forgotten first temple, sealed within stone like a memory inside a mind. The great mystery of Borobudur has always been its silence. No inscription records who built it, why, or for whom. The discovery of a hidden chamber adds a new silence beneath the old one. A silence deeper than the earth, holding the answers to questions humanity may never be permitted to ask. The sealed vault at Persepolis. When Alexander the Great burned Persepolis in 330 BCE, he reportedly found the Persian treasury and looted it. But ground-penetrating radar, conducted in 2020, revealed something he might have missed. A chamber complex beneath the treasury's floor. The chambers were deliberately filled with rubble and sealed. Iranian authorities have prohibited any excavation, stating that the site must remain undisturbed. But the initial surveys detected something unusual. Gold. Enough gold to create distinct radar signatures through meters of packed earth. Persepolis has always been a paradox of splendor and ruin. Built by Darius I and expanded by Xerxes I, it stood as the ceremonial heart of the Achaemenid Empire. An empire that once ruled from the Indus Valley to the Aegean Sea. When Alexander arrived, intoxicated by revenge for Xerxes' invasion of Greece, he ordered it burned. Ancient historians describe the palace melting in its own opulence, silver roof tiles liquefying, golden furniture collapsing into the flames. Yet, Despite centuries of excavation, archaeologists had never uncovered any significant trove beneath its floors. The 2020 survey, conducted by the Iranian Cultural Heritage Organization with European collaboration, used multi-frequency radar to map subsurface anomalies beneath the ruined treasury hall. The scans revealed a grid of rectangular voids, 3 major chambers, and several narrow connecting corridors sealed beneath what was once the treasury's central pavement. Within the rubble, instruments detected high-density metallic reflections. The pattern was unmistakable: gold and perhaps other alloys embedded deep within packed limestone fill. If genuine, these deposits could represent the second treasury described by late Babylonian records, a secret reserve intended to preserve the empire's wealth in case of invasion. Darius was known for redundancy. His empire operated on duplicate archives, duplicate fortresses, duplicate treasuries. It would not be surprising if Persepolis hid one beneath its own heart. Historical context strengthens the theory. Alexander's chroniclers mention that despite massive plunder, the Persians had hidden stores beyond counting that remained unaccounted for. When the city burned, much of the floor collapsed into lower vaults now buried under layers of ash and later sediment. The radar images appear to coincide with that same collapse zone. What intrigues scientists even more is the deliberate sealing technique. Geophysical analysis shows the voids were packed with alternating layers of crushed stone and clay. Similar to Achaemenid construction methods used to waterproof royal tombs, that means the filling was intentional, not the result of collapse, but a designed entombment. Excavation, however, is forbidden. Iran's cultural authorities argue that disturbing the vault could destabilize the ruins. Others whisper that the prohibition reflects political caution. Revealing a hoard of imperial gold beneath the burned Palace of Kings could ignite a storm of international claims and looting fears. Speculative data modeling suggests the amount of gold detected could exceed several metric tons, enough to fund a modern nation's museum system for decades. But without physical verification, the claim remains theoretical. Satellite imagery in 2022 showed new protective coverings over the site, suggesting continued monitoring but no entry. For now, Persepolis keeps its final secret sealed beneath fire-blackened stone. Somewhere below the throne room where Darius received envoys and Alexander drank his fateful wine, there may still rest the empire's last heartbeat, its treasury preserved not by conquest but by concealment, a vault of gold entombed in ashes, waiting beneath history's oldest ruins for the day truth outweighs caution. The hidden room at Pompeii. Pompeii's excavation has continued for over 250 years, but new discoveries still emerge. In 2021, ground-penetrating radar revealed a sealed chamber beneath the Villa of the Mysteries. The chamber appears to have been deliberately filled and sealed before the volcanic eruption of 79 CE. Italian authorities authorized careful excavation. They found a room with frescoed walls, perfectly preserved by the same ash that destroyed the city above. But the excavation stopped when they discovered that the floor had an entrance to another chamber below. That second chamber remains sealed, its exploration indefinitely delayed. The Villa of the Mysteries stands on the city's edge, its frescoes among the most haunting images of Roman art women in crimson drapery, participating in rites scholars still debate. When radar detected a void beneath it, archaeologists expected perhaps a collapsed cistern or storeroom. What they found was something far stranger. Excavators uncovered a rectangular chamber about 4 meters long, its ceiling intact, its frescoes untouched by time. The paintings showed scenes of purification figures, washing their hands in basins of light. Priests lifting scrolls toward the heavens. The pigments remained luminous, sealed from air for nearly 2,000 years. The team documented every inch before noticing a rectangular stone panel set into the floor. Beneath it, instruments revealed a second cavity, descending several meters deeper. That discovery forced an immediate halt. The lower void could not be safely accessed without risking collapse of the newly uncovered chamber. Engineers reinforced the site. But by then, the Italian Ministry of Culture had imposed a moratorium on further descent. What lies below remains a mystery recorded only in radar data. A circular space with a central pedestal, its walls producing magnetic echoes typical of bronze or iron decoration. Why would Romans seal such chambers before the eruption? One theory suggests ritual protection. In the months preceding 79 CE, seismic tremors terrified Campania's residents. Some households buried valuables, others performed purification rites. The villa's owners may have sealed their ritual room, preserving sacred objects they believed would endure through chaos, but the lower chamber complicates that narrative. Its geometry differs entirely, no simple storeroom or cellar, but a design echoing subterranean Mithraea, temples dedicated to the god Mithras. These underground sanctuaries were common among Roman elites during the 1st century CE. If the lower space is a Mithraeum, it would mark the first ever found in Pompeii, proof that Eastern mystery religions had penetrated the city's cultural heart. Thermal imaging shows that heat from the eruption reached only the upper chamber, leaving the lower one cool and intact. That means its contents, whatever they are, could be perfectly preserved, untouched since the day Vesuvius erupted. Archaeologists continue to petition for permission to reopen the dig, but authorities remain cautious. The Villa of the Mysteries is one of Italy's most fragile heritage sites. A misstep could irreparably damage both art and structure. For now, the second chamber remains sealed under stone and ash, suspended between discovery and secrecy. Pompeii has always been a dialogue between death and preservation. Every new room opens a window into the last breath of a civilization. This one, however, stays closed, a locked chapter beneath the frescoed visions of divine initiation. Beneath the painted rites of mystery may lie another mystery still deeper, waiting in silence beneath the city that time refused to forget. The secret chamber at Lalibela. Ethiopia's rock-hewn churches at Lalibela are carved from solid bedrock, but in 2016, radar surveys revealed that not all of the complex is visible. A chamber, approximately 15 meters in diameter, sits beneath one of the churches. The chamber appears to predate the churches, which were carved in the 12th century. Ethiopian Orthodox authorities have refused excavation permits, stating that the site is sacred and must not be disturbed. The surveys detected what might be carved pillars inside the chamber, arranged in a circular pattern. For centuries, Lalibela has been described as the New Jerusalem of Africa. Its 11 monolithic churches, cut directly into pink volcanic tuff, were said to have been built by angels in a single night. Carved top-down rather than constructed from the ground up, they stand as one of humanity's most improbable architectural achievements. Yet, radar evidence now suggests that the visible sanctuaries may rest atop something older, something hidden in the bedrock long before King Lalibela's time. The 2016 radar scans were part of a UNESCO-sponsored stabilization project. Engineers hope to map fractures in the rock to prevent collapse. But below the Church of St. George, the most famous cruciform structure they detected, echoes of another void. A perfectly circular space 15 meters wide, ringed by denser vertical forms resembling columns or pillars. Seismic soundings confirmed that these columns were carved from the same basalt as the surrounding plateau, implying deliberate excavation rather than a natural cave. Archaeologists hypothesize that the chamber could be a pre-Christian sanctuary, perhaps associated with the Aksumite civilization that flourished centuries earlier. The Aksumites practiced a fusion of indigenous and Judaic traditions, and their sanctuaries often used circular plans symbolizing cosmic order. If this chamber indeed predates the 12th century churches, it could represent an unbroken continuum of sacred use stretching more than 1,000 years. Local clergy, however, hold a different belief. According to the monastic tradition, Lalibela's churches descend directly from a heavenly prototype. Priests claim the lower chamber is not man-made, but of the angels, a foundation laid by divine beings as a vessel for holy relics. Pilgrims are told that disturbing it would unseal the mountain and bring calamity. The Ethiopian Orthodox Patriarchate therefore forbade further investigation, declaring the site eternally sanctified. Still, scientific curiosity persists. Gravitational surveys, conducted in 2018, revealed density variations consistent with hollow space extending beyond the main chamber, possibly a tunnel or shaft leading downward. Some researchers quietly propose that it might connect to an ancient water system, echoing the River Jordan trenches that link Lalibela's surface churches. Others imagine something even older, a burial hall from a forgotten dynasty, its pillars marking tombs now lost to memory. Because direct access is impossible, Researchers rely on computer simulations. Modeling suggests the chamber could support a domed ceiling, a form never seen in medieval Ethiopian rock-cut architecture, but known in earlier Aksumite monuments. That design continuity would be revolutionary, bridging Ethiopia's pre-Christian and Christian eras through a single unbroken stone. For now, the mystery remains locked beneath the red dust of the highlands. Visitors who walk barefoot across the courtyard of St. George have no idea that 15 meters below their feet, a perfect circle lies in darkness, its pillars uncounted, its silence unbroken. Perhaps it is a tomb, perhaps a temple, or perhaps only the echo of faith chiseled so deep into the earth that no empire, no religion, and no age has ever been able to erase it. The hidden passage at Abu Simbel. When the Abu Simbel temples were moved to save them from Lake Nasser's flooding, engineers discovered something unexpected. A passage carved into the cliff behind the temples. The passage was deliberately sealed with stone blocks before the temples were carved. Egyptian authorities documented the passage, but sealed it again after the move. The documentation remains classified, but engineers who worked on the project described a passage that descended for at least 30 meters before being blocked by collapsed rock. The relocation of Abu Simbel between 1964 and 1968 was one of the greatest engineering feats of the 20th century. To save Ramses II's colossal temples from the rising waters of the Aswan High Dam, the entire mountainside was cut into 20-ton blocks and reassembled 200 feet higher on artificial ground. But amid that monumental rescue, a quieter discovery was made, one that has never appeared in the official UNESCO reports. While survey crews mapped the sandstone strata behind the Great Temple's facade, they detected a narrow slit in the bedrock too regular to be natural. Excavation revealed a man-made corridor sloping downward into the cliff. Its entrance was sealed by dressed limestone blocks, older than the outer temple itself, the alignment cut directly beneath what would later become the sanctuary of Ramses II, suggesting that the pharaoh's architects may have known of it and built deliberately above. Engineers entered roughly 30 meters before the passage ended in collapse. The walls bore chisel marks distinct from New Kingdom tools, coarser, wider, more archaic. One worker described hieroglyphs unlike any he had seen, serpentine symbols and a sun disk inverted. The air inside was still, dustless, as though sealed for millennia. Geologists later analysed the strata and concluded that the passage predates the 13th century BCE construction of Abu Simbel by several hundred years. That places it within Egypt's late Middle Kingdom, an era associated with the worship of subterranean deities and solar rebirth. Some Egyptologists speculate it may have been part of an older sanctuary later buried by the cliff's natural accretion. Others whisper it could have been a royal tomb abandoned before completion, one of the lost resting places of Nubian governors or early Theban princes. When the temples were dismantled, the passage's existence posed a dilemma. Moving the cliff section containing it risked collapse of both the ancient and modern structures. After brief documentation, photographs, depth measurements, and sketches, the Ministry of Antiquities ordered it resealed. Those records remain classified, stored in Cairo's archives under restricted access. Decades later, a handful of surviving engineers have spoken cautiously about what they saw. They describe side niches cut into the rock at regular intervals, as though supporting statues or sarcophagi. One recalled seeing fragments of blackened wood at the collapse point, possibly the remnants of a ceremonial door. Another mentioned faint inscriptions referring to the Door of the South Sun, a phrase found nowhere else in Egyptian texts. Modern radar imaging from the 1990 seconds confirmed the passage's outline still exists behind the relocated temples, now buried under the artificial dome of concrete and stone. Whether it continues beyond the collapse remains unknown. Abu Simbel was built to immortalize Ramses II's divine image, a monument of light carved into shadow. But behind that triumphal facade lies an older shadow, still an unspoken corridor leading downward into the mountain, towards something Egypt chose to forget. Beneath the roar of tourist buses and the glare of desert sun, a passage sleeps under 30 meters of rock, carrying secrets of a time before Ramses himself was born. The secret room at Hagia Sophia, during restoration work in 2020, workers at Hagia Sophia discovered a sealed chamber in the building's foundation. The chamber predates the current structure, which was built in 537 CE and appears to be part of an earlier church that stood on the site. Turkish authorities cleared the chamber's contents before allowing documentation. The official report described fragments of historical significance. But photographs leaked to the press showed something else. A floor mosaic depicting symbols that don't match any known Christian iconography. Hagia Sophia has been rebuilt 3 times across 15 centuries, burned, toppled, and reborn with every empire that claimed Constantinople. Beneath its vast dome lies a labyrinth of earlier sanctuaries. The Church of Constantine, then Theodosius's Basilica, both consumed by fire before Justinian's Great Reconstruction. The 2020 restoration aimed only to reinforce the marble flooring. Instead, it uncovered a chamber that may belong to one of those vanished churches or to something even older. The discovery began with a subsidence in the southern aisle. Engineers scanning the area found a void beneath a cracked slab. When workers removed it, they found a descending stair of polished stone, sealed with plaster, that carbon dating later placed in the 5th century CE, decades before Justinian's Hagia Sophia. The chamber below measured roughly 5 by 6 meters, its walls of brick and marble inset with gold tesserae. On the floor lay a mosaic, unlike anything catalogued in Byzantine art. The photographs leaked online show concentric circles of interlaced lines forming a star of 8 points. Around it, inscriptions in Greek and what appear to be Coptic or possibly Syriac letters intertwine an impossible fusion of languages and styles. At the center sits a motif resembling an open eye set within a cross-shaped frame, flanked by crescent shapes. Art historians could find no parallels in Christian or pagan iconography. Some proposed it represented the cosmological Eye of God. The official statement released by the Directorate of Religious Affairs called the find a minor pre-Byzantine structure of limited heritage value. Yet witnesses present during the excavation reported that the contents were removed overnight by a military convoy. The chamber was resealed the following morning. Since then, the exact location has been omitted from public blueprints. Scholars outside Turkey have tried to piece together its significance from fragments. Architectural historians point out that Hagia Sophia stands atop the hill, once occupied by a pagan temple of Apollo, later converted by Constantine into his first Christian basilica. The chamber's orientation, slightly skewed from Justinian's main axis, aligns instead with that earlier sanctuary. If authentic, it might be the only surviving part of the Constantinian church, an archaeological bridge between Rome's sun cult and Christianity's rise. But the mosaic complicates that theory. Infrared photographs leaked to journalists show faint traces of silver paint forming geometrical grids beneath the tesserae, possibly an astronomical chart. Some experts now suspect the chamber functioned as an observatory or a symbolic cosmic sheller representing heaven beneath earth, a concept preserved in early Byzantine mysticism. In 2022, limited radar scans of Hagia Sophia's foundations revealed additional voids nearby, suggesting the sealed chamber could be one of several interlinked spaces. Authorities denied this interpretation, citing structural anomalies. Yet the data shows regular intervals, arches or corridors stretching toward the ancient cisterns beneath the city. The secrecy surrounding the find has only deepened public fascination. Pilgrims and tourists walk daily above what may be the last surviving relic of Constantinople's lost centuries, unaware that a forgotten mosaic lies in darkness beneath their feet, its meaning undeciphered, its faith unclaimed. Whether pagan, Christian, or something in between, the chamber beneath Hagia Sophia stands as a silent witness to the moment when one world ended and another began. The hidden vault at Ellora. India's Ellora caves are famous for their carved temples, but ground-penetrating radar in 2018 revealed something carved deeper. A chamber beneath the Kailasa temple. The chamber sits approximately 20 meters below the visible temple and appears to have been carved before the temple itself. Indian authorities have prohibited excavation, citing structural concerns, but the radar signatures suggest the chamber contains large stone objects, possibly sculptures. One reading suggested an object over 5 meters tall. The Kailasa temple at Ellora defies imagination. Carved from a single rock face, It's a freestanding temple removed, not built from the mountain, with more than 200,000 tons of stone extracted to reveal its form. Historians have long debated how 8th century artisans achieved this feat without modern tools. Now, the 2018 radar findings hint that the miracle might rest atop an even older secret. The survey began as part of a conservation project to map subsurface fractures caused by water seepage. When radar pulses penetrated beneath the temple's base, they bounced off dense shapes buried 20 meters below. The anomalies were rectangular, symmetrical, and aligned with Kailasa's central axis. Initial readings suggested multiple stone masses, possibly statues, one of which stood over 5 meters high. Archaeologists were stunned. The radar reflections didn't match natural basalt formations. Instead, they resembled chambers with vertical relief, hollow spaces containing objects of uniform density. The orientation suggested a deliberate layout, perhaps an earlier shrine or foundation temple. If confirmed, it would mean Kailasa was not the beginning of Ellora's sacred geometry, but its culmination built atop a forgotten sanctum carved centuries before. Historians recall that Ellora's caves span 3 religions: Buddhist, Hindu, and Jain, all sharing the same hillside across centuries. The site represents not a single faith but a dialogue in stone. Could the buried vault predate them all, perhaps belonging to a proto-religious order that worshipped the mountain itself? Local legends speak of Patala Kailasa, the underworld temple of shadows where gods rested before the world began. Devotees say the real Kailasa lies below the visible one, mirroring heaven underground. For centuries, pilgrims have dropped coins and prayers into the temple's drainage shafts, believing they descend to that hidden realm. The radar images now give that myth a tangible outline. Geologists studying the site warn that any attempt to excavate could destabilize the delicate monolith. The Archaeological Survey of India has therefore sealed the study results. Only fragments of data have leaked enough to suggest the vault contains smooth vertical surfaces and at least one massive form resembling a seated figure. In 2020, additional low-frequency scans confirmed that the cavity extends laterally, connecting to what might be natural fissures expanded by human hands. Whether tomb, shrine, or mythic echo, no one can yet tell. Ellora's greatness has always been its silence, stone transformed into art so intricate it seems alive. Now that silence extends deeper. Beneath the temple that carves heaven from mountain, something older waits in darkness. Perhaps the mountain's own memory of devotion, cut and sealed before history began. The sealed chamber at Luxor. In 2015, infrared thermography revealed temperature anomalies in the walls of Tutankhamun's tomb that suggested hidden chambers. But the same technology detected something else. A chamber beneath the Valley of the King's Floor, in an area between known tombs. The chamber appears to predate the 18th dynasty tombs surrounding it. Egyptian authorities have prohibited excavation, stating that any digging might destabilize the known tombs. The chamber remains sealed, but thermal imaging suggests it contains objects that retain heat differently from the surrounding rock. The Valley of the Kings has yielded royal secrets for more than 3,000 years, but the desert still hides more. The 2015 thermographic survey, conducted to re-examine anomalies near Tutankhamun's burial, inadvertently captured faint heat signatures from deeper strata between KV62 and KV63. The readings indicated a void roughly 12 meters below the valley floor, measuring about 15 by 8 meters. At first, scientists assumed a natural cavity, but repeat scans at midnight, when the valley's limestone cooled uniformly, showed persistent hotspots objects within the void, radiating retained heat long after the rock had cooled. The thermal contrast was too strong for random mineral deposits. Something inside was absorbing and releasing heat, like metal or ceramics. Archaeologists cross-referenced the location with 19th century maps. No known tomb lies there. More remarkably, the orientation of the anomaly doesn't match the grid of New Kingdom burials. Instead, it aligns northeast, an axis associated with Middle Kingdom funerary architecture, predating the 18th dynasty by nearly a millennium. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed the presence of a rectangular chamber sealed by compacted fill. If genuine, this structure could represent a transitional phase of Theban burial. Perhaps the prototype from which later pharaohs modelled their hidden tombs, yet excavation was denied. The valley's floor acts as the structural ceiling for dozens of known chambers. Any breach could trigger collapse. Instead, remote temperature logging continues to monitor the site. Readings taken in 2022 still show cyclical heating patterns, objects within the void, absorbing sunlight-filtered warmth through the ground and releasing it at night. What could retain heat for millennia? Some researchers speculate sealed metal coffers, ceremonial statues, or even remnants of early solar cult altars. The orientation toward the eastern cliffs supports this. The direction of sunrise and rebirth, a focus of Egypt's earliest mortuary beliefs. A handful of Egyptologists believe the chamber may predate the valley itself. Perhaps part of the ancient necropolis of Thebes before the royal burials shifted westward. That would place it in the time of Mentuhotep II, the pharaoh who first unified Egypt's divided kingdoms after centuries of chaos. If true, the chamber could contain the last remnants of a forgotten dynasty, an archive of the rulers erased by history when the new kingdom rose. The irony is striking. The Valley of the Kings, designed to hide the dead from thieves, may still hide its own origins beneath its feet. For now, the desert preserves its secret. The sand above the hidden vault grows cold each night, but deep below, unseen objects still hold their warmth, ancient sun caught forever in the stone heart of Egypt. The secret room at Knossos. Crete's Palace of Knossos has been excavated for over a century, but in 2019, ground-penetrating radar revealed a chamber that had been missed. The chamber sits beneath the throne room and appears to have been deliberately sealed before the palace's destruction around 1450 BCE. Greek authorities authorized limited excavation. They found a room with walls covered in frescoes depicting symbols that don't appear elsewhere in Minoan art. But the excavation stopped when they discovered that the floor concealed a shaft leading down. That shaft remains unexplored. Knossos has always existed in the borderland between myth and history. To ancient Greeks, it was the labyrinth, the palace of King Minos, the seat of a dynasty so sophisticated it seemed godlike, yet one that vanished almost overnight. Beneath its layers of myth lies a real civilization. The Minoans, a people who ruled the Aegean before Mycenae rose, whose ships linked Crete with Egypt and the Levant, and whose artisans painted dolphins and lilies with the same ease that they built plumbing and throne halls. The palace has been measured, mapped, restored, and debated for more than 100 years. Yet even here, something remained unseen until the radar scan of 2019. The anomaly appeared during a UNESCO-sponsored structural assessment. A dense radar return beneath the throne room hinted at a void cut from bedrock, 20 meters deep, directly aligned with the ceremonial seat. When a drilling camera confirmed a hollow space, archaeologists opened a narrow trench. Inside, they found walls coated in plaster, still bearing traces of vivid colour. The air smelled of salt and ash. What emerged was unlike anything found elsewhere at Knossos. The frescoes were geometric rather than naturalistic circles, interlocked with serpentine lines, 8 pointed stars, eclipsed suns, crescents filled with black pigment. The motifs seemed to chart celestial motion, perhaps an eclipse cycle or planetary path. Pigment analysis revealed unusual minerals: ground hematite, malachite, and Egyptian blue. A synthetic pigment rarely used in Crete before the Late Bronze Age. Whoever painted these walls had access to knowledge and trade far beyond the island. At the centre of the room lay a rectangular limestone slab, fitted seamlessly into the floor. When seismic probes examined it, the returns showed a narrow shaft dropping another 10 meters. The team halted immediately. Vibrations risked fracturing the delicate wall plaster. The shaft was sealed under protective covering, its depth only estimated. Interpretation divided scholars. Some saw the room as an astronomical observatory, a place where priests recorded lunar cycles and solar alignments, transforming cosmic rhythms into ritual geometry. Others proposed a chamber of initiation, where initiates were symbolically swallowed by the earth and reborn. The Minoans worshipped a goddess associated with snakes and the underworld. Perhaps this was her domain, a sanctuary beneath the throne, a literal heart of the labyrinth. Ancient hymns of Crete speak of the door beneath the seat of the queen where the earth remembers the sky. For centuries, scholars dismissed the phrase as metaphor. Now it feels prophetic. The alignment between the throne above and the hidden chamber below mirrors Minoan cosmology, the meeting of heaven and earth, of power and mystery. Further analysis deepened the mystery. Residue scraped from the floor contained traces of resin and charcoal, possibly from ritual fires. Microscopic pollen grains identified from olive, saffron, and laurel plants sacred to Minoan rites suggest that ceremonies once burned here in darkness. Acoustic modelling revealed that sound within the chamber resonates at low frequencies, matching the human heartbeat. A chant uttered here would seem to vibrate through the bones. When the palace was destroyed by earthquake and fire around 1450 BCE, the chamber appears to have been sealed deliberately. The slab was cemented with lime and ash, the passage filled with soil and stone. Whatever lay beneath the shaft, treasure, tomb, or terror, the Minoans meant it never to be disturbed. Today, visitors to Knossos walk above it without knowing. Beneath the reconstructed columns and tourist pathways lies a room where the air has not moved for 3,000 years, where paint still clings to stone like the echo of a forgotten language. Somewhere below that, a shaft falls into further darkness, perhaps toward another chamber, or the myth itself. Knossos began as myth, became archaeology, and now returns to mystery. The secret room beneath the throne reminds us that even when every stone seems known, the past keeps one door closed, and sometimes that door opens downward. The hidden chamber at Tikal. Guatemala's Tikal was one of the greatest Maya cities, with massive pyramids rising above the jungle canopy. But ground-penetrating radar in 2020 revealed something beneath Temple 4, a chamber system that appears to predate the temple's construction. The chambers are carved from bedrock and sealed with carefully placed stones. Guatemalan authorities have prohibited excavation, citing the pyramid's stability. But one reading suggested something unusual. A concentration of jade that would represent more of the precious stone than has been found in all other Maya sites combined. Tikal has always embodied the paradox of the Maya world: immense, intelligent, and mysterious. Deep in the Petén rainforest, its temples pierce through ceiba trees like stone mountains, built to mirror constellations above. Yet even in a city mapped by lasers and studied by drones, the Earth still hides chapters of its own design. The 2020 radar survey was part of an environmental monitoring project to measure underground humidity and preserve the temple foundations from erosion. But when technicians mapped the echoes under Temple 4, they saw a grid of symmetrical voids far deeper than expected, roughly 30 meters below the temple's base. The pattern did not match known burial vaults. Instead, 3 main chambers radiated from a central core arranged with mathematical precision. When the data were converted into 3D models, one detail caught the scientists' attention. The signal absorption within the central chamber was far stronger than ordinary limestone. Laboratory comparisons identified the signature of jadeite, the sacred green stone the Maya called Yaxtun, the heart of the sky. The density readings implied not scattered artifacts, but solid masses. Jade was the soul of the Maya world. It symbolized eternal life, fertility, and divine rulership. Kings wore it, bled upon it, and were buried with it. Yet all known excavations across the Maya lowlands combined have yielded only a few hundred kilograms. The anomaly beneath Temple 4, if confirmed, would represent several tons. Archaeologists theorize that the builders of Tikal encased offerings of jade beneath their greatest structure as a cosmic seed, the material embodiment of renewal. The pyramid itself may have been a mountain grown over a green heart, a sacred deposit ensuring the city's harmony with the underworld. Ancient inscriptions speak of the gift of the green sun buried beneath the stone mountain. For decades, that phrase was taken as metaphor. Now it seems prophetic. Despite the discovery, Guatemala's heritage authorities immediately suspended excavation. Temple 4 at 70 meters is the tallest surviving pre-Columbian building in the Western Hemisphere. Its stability depends on the compression of its base. Even minor vibration could trigger collapse. Engineers recommended only non-invasive study. In 2021, a multinational team used cosmic ray muon tomography to peer deeper. The imaging confirmed 3 connected chambers, their walls intact, with one central cubic object roughly 4 meters across. Its density matched that of compact jade or metamorphic rock. The object's perfect geometry baffled researchers. No natural process could explain it. Local lore offers another perspective. The Itza Maya tell of the Emerald Heart, a cube of living stone said to glow when touched by dawn. Priests of the Old Kingdom supposedly sealed it when invaders came from the east, vowing it would pulse again when the world was reborn. For centuries, scholars dismissed such tales as legend, but the cube's precise alignment facing the point where the winter solstice sun rises suggests intent, not accident. Today, the jungle reclaims Tikal once more. Roots crack temples, parrots roost on ancient stone, and the mystery sleeps below. Instruments still hum in the canopy, measuring echoes that no one is allowed to chase. Beneath the towering pyramid that once reached for the heavens, there lies another monument, buried in silence, the heart of jade, waiting to awaken. The sealed vault at Petra's end. Beyond Petra's famous facades lies a canyon that few tourists visit. At its end, ground-penetrating radar in 2021 revealed a chamber carved into the canyon wall, sealed by a rock slide that appears to have been deliberately triggered. The chamber is large, approximately 20 meters in diameter, with walls that radar suggests are covered in carvings. Jordanian authorities have prohibited any excavation, stating that clearing the rock slide might destabilize the canyon. The chamber remains sealed, but the radar penetrated deep enough to detect something at its center. A structure that reads as solid stone, roughly cubic, about 3 meters on each side. Petra is more than a city of stone, it is a city of silence. Hewn into rose-coloured cliffs by the Nabateans over 2,000 years ago, it was once a trading capital where incense, silk and gold flowed through the desert like lifeblood. Yet despite centuries of study, only a fraction of Petra's underground network has ever been explored. The 2021 radar scan, conducted by a conservation team mapping fault lines, hinted at something extraordinary, an untouched vault buried beneath layers of fallen sandstone. The site lies at the very end of the Wadi al-Sik al-Gharbi, a narrow gorge west of the main complex. Here, the cliffs rise like cathedral walls, and light touches the ground for only a few minutes each day. Radar imaging revealed a circular void, nearly perfect in shape, behind a slope of boulders thought to have collapsed naturally in antiquity. Closer analysis, however, showed the fall pattern was engineered rocks intentionally wedged and released to seal the entrance. Whoever did it knew precisely how to bury a secret for eternity. The chamber's interior scan showed rhythmic contours, consistent with carvings, arches, columns, and wall reliefs. In the center stood the most baffling discovery. A perfectly cubic block, 3 meters on each side, denser than the surrounding sandstone. Its composition remains uncertain, but readings suggest fine-grained quartzite or granite materials not native to Petra's geology. Transporting such stone into this desert canyon would have required immense effort, implying sacred or political importance. Archaeologists theorize that the vault could have been Petra's final refuge, a sanctuary built during the city's decline in the 3rd century CE. Nabatean inscriptions from that era mention a House of the Last Dawn, a sacred chamber where the city's relics were hidden as the desert reclaimed their empire. Its described location, beyond the faces of the kings, where light ends, matches this canyon precisely. The cubic monolith at the chamber's heart may have served as a reliquary or funerary monument, perhaps for the last priest-kings of Petra. Its alignment to the cardinal directions mirrors the Kaaba-like geometry found in Nabatean temples dedicated to Dushara, the god of the mountain. To his followers, the cube represented the eternal body of the divine unchanging amid decay. Geologists studying seismic readings found faint cavities above the chamber's dome, possibly designed to channel airflow or amplify sound. Acoustic modelling suggests that any voice within would resonate for nearly 7 seconds, a natural echo chamber for ritual chant. In the mythology of Petra's people, sound itself was a pathway to the divine. Some believed prayers turned to stone if spoken within sacred caverns. Excavation remains forbidden. The canyon's rock layers are unstable, and even minor disturbance could trigger collapse. Still, researchers have mapped the exterior slope with drones and discovered faint tool marks, ancient chiseling where the ceiling rocks were once cut. It appears that the burial of the vault was not an accident, but a deliberate act of concealment by those who understood their civilization was dying. Local Bedouin stories preserve a memory of it. They speak of Al-Bayt al-Sakra al-Ghaniya, the rich stone house that hums at sunrise when struck by the first beam of light. Scientists call it an acoustic illusion. But perhaps it is the echo of a forgotten ceremony, repeating itself each dawn in the canyon where time stands still. Beneath Petra's crumbling facades, where caravans once passed and kings once prayed, a final vault lies sealed, a tomb not just of stone, but of an entire world's memory.